OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Oh yeah, bang on 7:30. It's Monday morning, bright-eyed and not so bushy-tailed. It's myself and Eoin with you all the way through until 10 this morning. A lot of people out there feeling themselves this morning. You know, the Mayo folk are like, yeah, Eoin, your power rankings are wrong. They are officially wrong. Or had you already factored in Oisin Mullin is staying? You hadn't?
No.
Right.
Mayo up to third. I think it's fair to say, yeah.
Right, straight away.
Straight away.
Wow.
Congratulations,
Breaking
Mayo.
news.
Top three. Top three. Bronze medal position for Mayo. Can they topple the big two, which are, of course, Dublin and Tyrone? Time will tell.
Right. Very. Hang on a second. Where are Kerry?
Fourth.
Kerry or fourth?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I didn't realise what I was doing. I walked straight into it.
This morning. Quick shuffling into the deck. Back-to-back young. He has one back-to-back young player, hasn't he?
It's mad.
Only three people have done it. All Mayo players. All playing for Mayo this year.
It was a very late night.
Yeah.
PRO press release, like 9:30. Was it around that?
Around then, yeah.
On a Sunday night, confirmation that the rumours that have been sweeping the country are true. Oisin Mullin is staying. It may not feel like it in January, but this might be the biggest GAA news of the year.
Like it could prove it as the months go on, because the guy is so good. And like, I mean, when it felt that this year it was kind of like, which of the versions of Mayo are better? A version of Mayo with Cillian O'Connor or a version with Oisin Mullin? Turns out we're going to get a version with them both.
We don't have to decide. Obviously, we'll talk about that a little bit later as well in our power rankings, in our performance rankings, no doubt. But other people feeling themselves are Everton fans a little bit, maybe, after what happened at the weekend. Are they like, yeah, this is good, we feel better about ourselves? I don't know. No.
They've lost to Norwich, so I'd say possibly not. I understand your point.
Yeah, it's like short-term pain, long-term gain. They did not want Rafa at the club.
No, and I mean they reacted pretty quickly to the sour tone there.
The other thing that's happening is you're going to see a lot of zombies walking around the streets of Ireland today. If you're an NFL fan, you realise what I'm talking about, because this is the period of the year where the games are too good to go to bed and they're on too late for you not to be a zombie. Really.
Especially if you're a 49ers fan, of course, as everybody at home knows, that you've come in here disappointed and heartbroken on many a Monday morning. But today is not one of those Monday mornings.
Very freaked out by the whole thing. So did you watch any of this game?
I did. I saw the vast majority of it and turned it off before it got good, I think.
Well, so the 49ers opened up with like one of the best opening drives you're ever going to see. You're like, this is going to be a blowout. This is amazing. Look at this team. They could win anything. And then slowly but surely they started to make mistakes, and Jimmy Garoppolo really played very badly at various stages of the game, and the game ended up where the 49ers nearly got a first down, which would have killed the game, and the referees, it's funny, right, because the game of American football for a lot of us is opaque. The rules are difficult to understand, and it turns out it's exactly the same for the players, because the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys didn't quite know the rules at the end of the game, nor did the centre. I'd say between them they're going to earn about 50 million quid this year, and their job is to play American football. Dallas got the ball back with 30 seconds left on the clock and had to travel about 40 maybe 60 yards, right? First down, ball out of bounds. It's like 8 or 9 seconds left on the clock. And you're like, okay, well, they can have a shot at the end zone here. There's been one Hail Mary, I think, in Dallas Cowboys history to win a game. It looks like, oh my God, the 49ers are going to throw up. They're going to, like, they've puked on national television. Biggest game there. They've just puked. It's like,
you're just being paranoid at this point as an Irish fan.
No, I think. I mean, like, there's probably two opportunities for them to throw to the end zone. All they've got to do is just like take the shots. But instead, Dak Prescott goes on a run. Now, the clock keeps ticking if you don't run out of bounds. So he runs, makes a load of yards, and now he's like in the red zone pretty much. But the clock is down to like 5, 4, 3.
He doesn't snap it.
And well, you can't snap it. I didn't know this. I didn't know the rules, but he didn't know the rules either, it looks like. So the centre snaps the ball to Dak, but the referee is legging it from like miles behind, because the referee has to touch the ball before you can start to play.
Right, so you haven't caught up on this probably.
The referee is tiny, and he's pushing through these linemen who are like giant 20-stone men, hulks, and he has to push them out of the way to get the ball. And he gets the ball and touches it, and Dak snaps it, and it's like 0 seconds on the clock.
Because the ref didn't touch it before the clock went out.
And everybody's like, well, it's the Cowboys. I mean, we've just seen them. They basically gave the Cowboys another shot at it like 2 minutes ago. And everybody's like, I think the game might be over here. game might be over. And the referee comes in and does a, that's the end of the game. And the stadium was like, what? I remember, what was the World Cup semi-final where the South African referee, whose name I couldn't remember in the quiz, ran off the field.
Oh, yeah.
The referees are like running off the field. Like, what? What's just happened here?
To be fair, if that's the rule, I mean, it's a complicated rule book, but Dak's got to get out of bounds at that point, doesn't he?
Don't run it. Take the shots. Don't throw the ball. If it's a completion, your guys are getting out of bounds anyway, and you're getting close to the end zone, and you're going to have 2 opportunities to do it. But like, what are they doing? Yeah. And the 49ers at that stage had kind of gone into their shells really badly and collapsed a little bit. So
right,
it was a wild weekend for that part. All the rest of the stuff, apart from the fact how good the Bills were, which I think is important from a Mayo perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. We just before that, 2 things from that Cowboys-Niners game that came up before I went to sleep. The sun in the AT&T Stadium. What the hell is that about? And also, why in your right mind, as an offensive coordinator, would you ask your quarterback to throw the ball when you know that your receivers are going to have sun in their eyes? I just couldn't get over that. It's like, there's a pretty easy fix to the receiver facing towards the window at the sun and catching the ball. You just don't throw the ball.
There's only one tiny little square in the whole stadium where the sun is, because that part of the stadium has, for whatever reason, they've decided it's like Newgrange. Bang on 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Arlington or whatever it's called, the sun will come through, and on the halfway line you'll be able to be blinded by the sun. So great memes.
And then the second thing was obviously the big screen getting hit by the ball from a punter. Apparently, now, I mean, the AT&T Stadium is a fantastic facility. I haven't been there, but it looks like a fantastic facility.
I would like to go.
There is one place on earth that I know for a fact that you can't hit the roof of if you kick the ball up really high, and that is the Connacht Aerodome. I've heard from good sources that actually no matter how hard you try and kick it up there, it's never going to hit that ceiling. Not the same in Texas, obviously. Clearly, the engineering that goes on in Mayo is just a little bit better than the engineering that goes on in Dallas.
Well, that's what you get for your $2 billion. How much was the Connacht Aerodome? It wasn't $2 billion anyway.
No, certainly not. A fraction of that. But they were my 2 NFL takeaways from last night.
Well, if anybody has any that they'd like to share, you can get into our YouTube comments. You can slide into our DMs. Ideally, you do it in public, though, at Off the Ball AM. It is time at 7:37 for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Right, where do we start, Owen?
We're going to start with the bad this morning. There's a couple of clubs there, as you can see on the sidebar, Montpellier and Everton in the red, and I think Montpellier is a pretty easy one to go to. First of all, absolutely destroyed by Leinster yesterday. Leinster with their record win in the Heineken Cup. Just to get the previous record up here, it was 92-17 against Bourgoin in 2004, which was the previous record by Leinster. A team, Bourgoin, that is now called Bourgoin Jallieu, who are playing the 3rd tier of French rugby. It has been a massive nosedive from their perspective over the last little while. Yesterday was 89-7 win for Leinster at the RDS. Just an absolutely, it was a shocking win, really, in many ways. And there was a lot of people during the game being like, that's what you get, Montpellier for playing a second string team, and that's what Leinster give you when they feel they've been screwed over. Felt a little bit of sympathy listening to Philippe Saint-André, reading his comments this morning and talking about the amount of changes that he had to make, and how much he says that COVID has ravaged the squad over the last little while, because he's an honourable man and he seems like a sound gent, but other than that,
okay. I mean, they did manage somehow to come away with that 28-0 on the basis of stuff they'd said. Do you know, it was them. They certainly helped to spin that 28-0 their direction. So I don't know. Maybe the wages of sin are death, and the best type of revenge is served cold and you do your talking on the scoreboard. But Leinster are right to be pissed off with how they were treated by the tournament organisers, by the tournament generally. This does not speak well to the tournament. The tournament is a bit of a shit show at the moment, and if they manage to get out of this and into the knockout stages, and the thing is, right, there were loads of brilliant games. There were enough brilliant games across the tournament that everybody's like, okay, fair enough, but this can't keep happening. Stuff like this just can't keep happening. I realise COVID is a massive issue, and maybe when it all settles down, the individual clubs who are putting out their B teams will recommit to the competition properly. But what is the future for this competition? I'm not sure at the moment.
Yeah, cast with a whole pile of changes as well last Friday. Like, it's interesting that La Rochelle are one of the teams that took this weekend really seriously, and they're obviously coached by an Irish guy, and there does seem to be just a different view from France towards this competition as we have over here, that they view their domestic league so much more importantly than the Irish provinces do, for a whole range of legitimate reasons, I would say as well. Like, I don't feel overly sympathetic towards Montpellier. It was just during the game it was like more for Leinster, but afterwards just reading Philippe Saint-André, I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough. I mean, it's you're in a not the easiest situation in the world, but I accept. I mean, they didn't exactly help Leinster out when they needed it a few weeks ago. That being said, if you bring it back to last year, maybe French rugby fans felt that Leinster didn't help Toulon out at all, and maybe this is all just like a domino effect from Leinster. But as it ended up, it was just Leinster, I guess, being Leinster, but just even more brutal than they usually are in the way in which they won the game.
We should say as well, Tadhg Furlong went off injured after 7 minutes in this game, which is obviously going to be hugely important in terms of the depth chart that we did last week. It was like, well, Andrew Porter is our second best tight head at the moment. That was what Keith Wood said on the show last week. So does that mean Andrew Porter gets shifted over? We'll see. You know. And the other thing about this is maybe actually a few injuries for Ireland heading into the Six Nations isn't the worst thing. Just tamp an expectation. Let's not see our full team out just yet. Play the kids in this one. I don't know. We want to win, but do we? Do we want to win? Are we sure we want to win this year? I don't think we want to win.
Like, it's to use an NFL phrase, we're in win now mode in 2023.
We're not win now mode right now. This is like a transition rebuild. You know, we're keeping our cards close to our chest. We're looking to let the grass grow so that we can be in the long grass. Yeah. At the moment, the wild buffalo have been eating the grass, and the grass is really short.
Yeah.
And we're like, everybody's looking at the snake in the grass going, I can see you, snake. I can see you.
Yeah.
We need the grass to grow so we can be hidden.
Leinster rugby is just one big Husqvarna ride-on lawnmower.
Ah, it's like not even ride-on. It's the little
robot
machine. Exactly. Stop cutting the grass.
Yeah. But that's the problem with Leinster. When you put up when you score 89 points,
yeah, you're not
lawnmower mode.
You're not hiding anything.
No. You mentioned the Tadhg Furlong injury yesterday as well. Obviously, James Ryan pulled up before the game, and Jordan Larmour going off injured as well is a bit of a setback, because you're watching him in the first half and you're thinking, now injuries would work in his favour for the Six Nations. Maybe not so much for. Maybe the Six Nations is too high stakes for the IRFU and for Irish rugby to be throwing in the kids. But it is a perfect scenario for injuries to fall in Jordan Larmour's favour, for him to rediscover himself this year in the Six Nations, and he looked really good in that first half. Hopefully his injury isn't too bad. But if you kind of like broaden that picture out over the course of yesterday, you're looking at some of those Ulster backs, you're looking at even the likes of Jimmy O'Brien for Leinster as well, and thinking to yourselves, like, this is a fairly exciting time if you're looking at the Irish backline. And I know we haven't got to the depth chart yet for Ireland's backs on the show, but they should be really, really interesting. Like, when you look at that Ulster performance later on in the day yesterday, is Michael Lowry edging in on being Ireland's second best fullback, I wonder, and how good are the rest of those kids around him? Like a backline with an average of around 22 yesterday, if you take away Billy Burns. So it's just unbelievably exciting times from them. And I mean, you can't call Leinster exciting anymore, because we know exactly what their ceiling is, and their expectation is to win this whole thing out. But still, from Ireland's perspective, it does look like things are ticking along nicely.
Jacob Stockdale's still only 25, right? And obviously he still has to come back into the team. Balakoon's actually 24. I didn't realise he was as old as that, but his performance was like, the finish for his try was Hickey-esque, but he also runs with the ball in one hand, and what is he, 194 and 100 kg, 6'4 inches. Like, he's a cross between Shane Horgan and Dennis Hickey. Get him in the team, let's see what he can do. Brilliant ball handling skills. He was great. Larry was great. Doak was great.
Yeah.
Like, now,
and Doak is 20, let's not forget it. He's the youngest of the lot.
And like, Doak had a full week this week. He knew he was playing because Cooney was injured, went off last week, and it was like, okay, big game, Franklin's Gardens. There's a massive presentation to Courtney Laws beforehand, where Courtney Laws brings his four kids out onto the 4 or 5, whatever. It's big, huge kind of moment for them, and it's like, nah. Now they almost coughed it up at the end. They almost unfortunately had a similar response to Connacht, but they didn't. They got away with it, and that's one of those big wins for them. I don't know. I think you must be very excited if you are an Ulster fan at the moment. So Larry's 23, Hume is 23,
McIlroy's 21.
Yeah, and Doak is 20.
So that's an average age of just over 22 from those players, and like it's kind of hard to see sometimes which one is going to be the kid that actually sticks out and actually make a real mark at international level. But it seems at this point that they're being trusted in the biggest games. Granted, obviously the opportunity came up for Doak with Cooney's troubles this week, but it does feel that this crop of youngsters from Ulster are there to stay, and that this is like the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years at Ulster, in the backs anyway, sorted. And I know Ulster have had their problems up front quite a bit for the last few years. At the breakdown and in the scrum is going to be what will win them competitions, that this backline is going to put the icing on the cake quite a bit. But it does seem that this is maybe just a cut above some of the great Ulster backlines we've seen over the last little while. The standard setter obviously would be the team that maybe got to the Heineken Cup final in 2012. Is this team with its kids in the next couple of years able to get to that level? And you'd have to say that they probably are, if the pack are good enough and this progression keeps happening. Like that, Doak tried to put them 10-0 up, like you mentioned, the one-handed pick up there, Lowry, Balakoon, Doak, just 3 moments of magic in that try in particular, and you're thinking to yourself, this is special. This is not some sort of flash in the pan from these kids, and they're great to watch. Like there may be a caveat here in all of these results that you kind of say are the Premiership teams also not as interested as the URC teams. But it does seem that it's URC number 1, Premiership number 2, and Top 14 number 3 in terms of caring about the Champions Cup.
100%, yeah. We'll come back to this obviously with Ronan O'Gara in about 15 minutes time. But if you're an Ulster fan and you're feeling it this morning, drop us a comment if you're a Connacht fan. Or Connacht next?
Connacht are not next, but let's just quickly mention Everton, who are in the red this week. I mean, Roberto Martinez is Barney Gumble being thrown out by Mo, and all of a sudden he appears behind Mo again in his pub straight away. That is Roberto Martinez. He'll be back at Everton in the coming days, and I don't think Everton fans are overly excited about his prospect, but they are about the prospect of Benitez not being manager this weekend.
Is he mad taking this job? Okay, so let's just play this out, right? You've got control of one of the best squads in the world, heading to the World Cup in 10 months' time, right? It's 11 months' time. It's the World Cup final is next week, 11 months. And your team, if they all stay fit, is going to be as competitive as any team in the middle of a season. This is going to be a smash and grab World Cup. All you need is 5 or 6 of your best players to stay fit, and enough players who can do what you're supposed to do in the broiling heat. And you're going to double job. So they're talking about potentially, if Martinez takes it, it'll be on an interim basis till the summer. But then if it works, if it doesn't work, your reputation is a bit shattered, and everybody at training is like, wait, do you have your Everton hat on here, or is there or are you got your Belgium jersey on? Which is it? My point is, stick with Belgium. I realise there's lots of money from Everton because they haven't a clue what they're doing, and you might get like a 3-year deal and get sacked in 6 months' time and get to spend a year on the beach and happy days. So I can see the allure, but there's a better job coming if you do a good job with Belgium, where you're going to do a good job with Belgium because it's the World Cup and they're like, you've got De Bruyne. Did you see what he did at the weekend? Look at the Everton team. It's terrible.
Yeah. Did you see what Lukaku did at the weekend though? No, I'm going to joke. Belgium is clearly a safer job. There is nothing safe about Everton, and maybe you could there is a huge chance that your time at Everton is going to end because you get sacked. Like, in fairness, that's the same at most football jobs at the moment, in fairness, but Everton is in just such a bad state at the moment that we will have, I think Nathan always makes this point, that there's an annual Seamus Coleman interview where he apologises on behalf of his...
It's becoming one every 6 months.
It's one every 6 months at this point. So that's going to happen again next season. Maybe Roberto Martinez will be the blood sacrifice if that does happen. So I think you have a point. We can't lose sight, though, of the fact that Everton's woes have been increased by the fact that Adam Ida finally got his first Premier League goal. Oof. But not only did Adam Ida get his first Premier League goal, he managed to get the match of the day treatment. But not only did he get analysis from Alan Shearer, he got the whole hog. He got Mika Richards' laugh on the back of a Gary Lineker pun.
The winner was scored by the Republic of Ireland international, Ida. I'm not sure it's Ida or Ida, but it's definitely Ida or Ida. We'll go with Ida.
What a day for Norwich. What a day for him. His first Premier League goal.
I didn't get it. I couldn't hear it. So what was it?
He said, I'm not sure if it's Ida or Ida, but it's definitely either or either.
Okay.
Yeah. He's made it, Adam Ida. He's made it.
What I liked about the finish was that it was really scratchy and scrappy, and like it wasn't the, so I don't know if you all saw his chance during the week where he gets the ball, dribbles past three lads and smacks it, and it's up against it's saved onto the crossbar by Fabianski. Right, it was against West Ham, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what Jeff Stelling was talking about, that. But this was it was a beautiful counter-attacking goal, and I don't know, it's like, if he can do that and he can do the stuff he's doing during the week. I'm trying very hard not to get too excited, but it's hard.
I'm trying very hard for my excitement not to be completely ruined by that match of the day moment, to be quite honest. That just ruined the whole day for Adam Ida, I suspect. Like, he could have had two as well at the weekend. The Michaelenko back pass was comically bad, and he could have scored from there, but also just moments before that he creates a great opportunity just by getting into a wide position, cutting down the end line and squaring the ball for a teammate. It's that work around the pitch which Adam Ida has been so good at for the last little while, and then getting on the ends of moves with Timo Pukki playing in front of him is something that he seems to have added over the last couple of weeks. So things are looking okay for him. Granted, it's one goal, but his celebration, you didn't need to see the celebration, but if you didn't already feel absolutely delighted for Adam Ida, then the passion in his response to scoring a goal would have just put you to that place anyway.
Yeah. Oh, it was really, really exciting to see him reaching that level and having the support from the new manager who comes in and has picked him again and again, really, and is sticking with him, and it's getting rewarded. And they're like, is it possible they don't go down? I mean, it is this stage. The season is so crazy. Like, Newcastle drew. I mean, are all these Newcastle players going to bet in straight away? Are they all going to really decide that they want to play for Eddie Howe? I'm not sure. We'll talk about that with Vinny Perth a little bit later.
Yeah, and it's like, the crazy thing about the season is that Burnley are 2 points behind Norwich, and they have 4 games in hand at the moment. That's the situation that we're in. If you move on to the Amber this morning, Connacht in the Amber, this would have been the definition of a green had things managed to hold out at the sports ground on Saturday. It was a really good performance for a lot of the game from Connacht to have come back from the early 14-0 deficit at half-time, no less, and to put in that second half performance. Like, it was on the verge of becoming like one of these really famous European days for Connacht that would have been benchmarked by qualification essentially for the next round. Now, because they ended up getting 2 bonus points from the game, there is a good chance that Connacht go through anyway, and that's why it's not a complete disaster for them. But I don't think Andy Friend was thinking about that whatsoever in the aftermath of the game, because it was gut-wrenching. It was like, from a Connacht perspective, Ronaldo scoring 2 goals at the end against Ireland a couple of months ago. It was just, this was such an opportunity. Both of these games, the one on Welford Road as well, it's such a great opportunity for Connacht to get one over these teams.
Was that in 2021? I think that was in 2020. I think you're lying to me about the timing. Go on.
No, like, time is definitely not a real concept at the moment. Like, sooner or later they're going to have to get one of these wins, but I think at this point the progression they've shown this season has been noted, really. And like, of course they're going to lose maybe the likes of Delan next season, and trying to keep this up and trying to build on this over the course of the next couple of years. It's not always a guarantee with Connacht, as we saw after the Pro 12 a couple of years ago, but there's something exciting building there this year.
There was a very important factor that, like, Pat Lam left very soon afterwards. Like, you would hope that Andy Friend sees progression within the system as a definite possibility here, because, you know, listen to a lot of the comment over the weekend about how you can tell how well coached the team is and how the players are getting better. Like,
that's the thing.
Connacht are getting better. Connacht are a really well coached team,
and that's exactly it. It's not so much new arrivals or anything like that. It's the players who were there last season are better players now than they were 12 months ago. Yeah, that's an amazing statement on Andy Friend.
And players who've lost form recently are getting their form back again. You know, it's exactly the type of thing. how do you get your form back when you've lost it? Well, with the support of good coaching and your network and, you know, hard work and all that kind of stuff. But, like, it doesn't always happen, and it is happening at Connacht at the moment. So, like, it feels patronising to be talking about Connacht having been beaten in the way that they were beaten. But this is one of the best teams in England who weren't just picking their B team, who did want to win this game and who are in a roll at the moment. So, I don't know. I think they should be sickened. They should be rightfully sickened. But at the same time, cold light of day, midweek, they're like, let's go and qualify. Let's see where this journey takes us this season. Yeah, for sure. And, like, I mean, the going from 24 teams to 16 may seem a bit farcical, but I think in this situation, it's like, get Connacht into the knockout stages. We'd all be pretty happy with that. They're in the amber this week. In the green, then, two things to touch on. First off, Seamus Power. Seamus Power could, like, just buy a house in Hawaii and just live there full time and play like 2 golf events a year, and he'd make a pretty healthy living. He finished in a tie for third over the course of the weekend in Hawaii, earned at the Sony Open, that is, earned $442,000 last night. He was obviously T15 at the Tournament of Champions last week, and he's into the world's top 50 for the first time. So he's thinking about Magnolia Lane at this point. He's thinking about teeing it up at the best, and obviously there's a lot of time to go between now and then. But if you're looking at, I mentioned there a moment ago about Connacht and their arc at the moment, that it's just been constant form over the last little while. Then Seamus Power, he was 436th in the world last January. He's now into 49th. It's just been a remarkable time, and he's kind of like making Sunday night's appointment viewing for anybody who wouldn't necessarily be drawn towards some of these PGA events. That being said, I mean, the leaderboard was fairly well stacked last night. Hideki Matsuyama did beat Russell Henley in a playoff at the end. They both got to 23 under par. We're seeing big scoring at the moment, and but yeah, Seamus Power in the mix in a tie for third, and lovely payday. He loves Hawaii. Yeah, and you can see why. Absolutely. Sensational performance from him over the weekend. I'm on the Golf Channel. His biography, speaks Gaeilge, or Irish Gaelic, the national and first official language of Ireland. Says if he wasn't a professional golfer, he'd be an accountant. Always been good with numbers, math, chemistry and physics were always my strongest subjects. They've changed that, because there's no way he said math, is there? Or has he gone full GMAC at this stage? He has, yeah. But in fairness, he's like coming from a different place. He's been playing over there for so long. I think the first time I heard him speak wasn't necessarily with the Waterford brogue. It was more with the American accent. Yeah, he was GMAC before GMAC was cool, to be honest. Well, there you go. And hopefully, look, not to put any pressure on him, but obviously, you know, GMAC has won a major. But he's looking forward to the rest of the year, thinking I can do anything at this stage. Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, it was an amazing sort of late Sunday night for Irish sport in general. Ireland's cricketers got their ODI series win in the West Indies as well. Like, this was a nervy finish. It was on, I think, the Red Button and BT last night. The man of the moment was a Tyrone man, Andy McBride, who suffered a concussion earlier in the week in the first of the 3 games. Sorry, not earlier in the week, that would have been a couple of weeks before that. And he went 4 for 28 as the West Indies were bowled out for 2-1-2 earlier in the day yesterday. And then he went to the other side of the ball, batted, followed up with his second ODI half century, and Ireland get home in the 45th over. So Andy McBride was the man for Ireland last night. This historic win in Jamaica away to the West Indies is one of the other stories we were keeping an eye on last night. The other thing we're putting in the green this morning is Mayo, because that was the third of the big stories coming out last night. As you mentioned, it was a late night statement from Mayo GA to confirm that Oisin Mullin is staying put, and it does add a little bit of a different tint into this year's All-Ireland Championship. But the context here is that everybody's really excited for this year's All-Ireland Championship anyway. Like, I don't think anybody would have said that Mayo are not a contender even without Oisin Mullin, and I would venture even without Cillian O'Connor. They'll always find a way of getting themselves into contention, but this just makes them a real front runner, I would say, at the moment, if we accept that Dublin aren't going to get back to the level they were a couple of years ago, which they won't, but they'll still be in the mix. Mayo will still be in the mix. Well, Tyrone, obviously. For anybody just joining us, at the top of the show I asked you, does this have an impact? I thought you were going to say no. I thought you were going to immediately be like, no. My performance rankings would already have, my power rankings would already have included the fact that I thought that more than likely Oisin Mullin was going to stay. But incorrect. You're now telling me that your power rankings were wrong last week, Eoin, and that things have changed. New information came to light, buddy. The rug really brings the room together. Oisin Mullin really brings the room together.
He really brings the room together. There's no question about it.
So what's happening?
Mayo are into number 3 in the power rankings, and there's no getting away from
very
that.
casual about this, Owen. This is you're very casually just like making the people of Mayo this morning feel a little bit in themselves, going, what happened?
Yeah, like, I mean, how can you deny those?
Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are going to win the Super Bowl.
And no, I mean, like, even if Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl, it's not going to be.
That's a big sign.
It is a big. I mean,
that's like Cleveland.
I was going to say Cleveland in 2016 was a big sign, but it wasn't in the end, was it?
Well, it is. I mean, like in 2022, when Mayo win, they'll be like, the Red Sox winning was a good sign for us. We knew then that we were doing the right thing. I saw somebody tweeted the other day that the next season or the season after, Spurs' last title win will be closer to 1890 than it will be to the current era. If you just if you go backwards from Mayo's last win, what are you, with every passing year, are you getting into like 1890s? Is it? Are we the midpoint? Like the invention of the steam engine will be next. The Jurassic era will be next. And all of a sudden, it's like, no. The Bills win, Oisin Mullin staying, thanks very much.
Like, when we had these conversations about Mayo, and like we have them quite a bit about like when this era of Mayo player is going to end, I don't think we've quite had the conversation about whether or not this Mayo team could potentially be the best of the century. Like, because that is a live possibility. I'm not
best
saying
Mayo team of the century.
Sorry.
Okay.
Mayo's best team of the century.
Okay.
Because there is this possibility around a lot of these younger players who really came on stream last year, or maybe not even some of the younger players like the Paul Gilroy, who's much older, who kind of just arrived last year all at once, and without their talismanic forward, they just really didn't land a shot at all in the final. But there is still a lot of improvement, I feel, in those new faces to come along, and that there will be newer faces this year as well. You throw back into the mix of Fit Killeen O'Connor, as I said earlier, himself and Diarmuid O'Connor, the only two people before Oisin Mullin who've done back-to-back Young Players of the Year, and then Oisin Mullin does it as well. The three of them are in the same squad. That is how highly rated those three players are, and then they've got all the parts around them. That I just wonder is...
There's no more excuses.
The conversation around, the end of that great team that came so close in 16 and 17 and 15 and 13.
Right.
Like, are those... Like, did we miss the point completely? Were they actually just getting out of the way for a better team to come forward and actually...
They were John the
win
Baptist, and this is Jesus Christ.
But potentially.
They all have the Jesus Christ hair and everything.
Well, exactly. I mean, Jesus Christ, if he was around today, would be saying to himself, Jesus,
blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus that we're used to.
I wish I put it into the Oisin Mullin style. That could have been you, Jesus, but you obviously didn't have the foresight. Just a quick mention of some of the other
30 seconds, yeah.
stories. Andy McEntee is not happy with the club action getting a big spotlight.
Why don't we come back to this later, because it's actually a really good talking point.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so it's 3 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. Owens, go on, spit it out. What?
No, the tension. Like, if you haven't caught Andy McEntee's comments,
it's a cliffhanger.
Get them later on.
3 minutes past 8. That is this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
If you want to enter our performance ranking competition, by the way, all you got to do is get in touch with us on whatever platform you're on and tell us who you think should be in the red, who you think should be in the green, who you think should be in amber, whatever. And you know the rules by this stage, and you could win a Gillette starter pack. We're going to take a quick break. We're back with Ronan O'Gara.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Are we allowed to enjoy this?
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
You stand back and you watch, you can see why these guys are top internationals.
Has he lost the plot here? Or is it just all good fun? I think it's good fun.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Okay, 4 minutes past 8 this morning. Loads of comments coming in from you about some of the stuff we've been covering so far. Brian Dillon says, lads, Tom Brady's going to win another Super Bowl. Surely the greatest athlete, sports person of all time. That is a conversation that we can definitely come back to. I'm not sure that they're going to win another Super Bowl this year. I think that there's a lot of very other good teams who will have their number because they're missing loads of their players. So the NFL was ridiculously good. Dallas, Jesus, what was going on? Says Shifty lad. Good morning to you, Shifty. They had 2 chances and ran over. And Dahi says the most typical Cowboys ending and nearly a typical 49ers final quarter collapse. So yeah, that's from Dahi this morning. Ty Carroll says, I thought Ger was happy about the Villa game. Double-edged sword, right? You go 2-0 down to Man United, you think, okay, this is a bit of a disaster. And then Coutinho comes on and the energy around the place changes. Ramsey, what a footballer.
He's class.
But then you're thinking, can we not just go, come on. We've been watching this movie where Villa go 2-0 up against Man United and it gets back to 2-2. And what happens inevitably? Well, a late winner for Manchester United. Can we not just do that? So it's very, you're getting sucked in.
Yeah.
You're getting sucked in and everything you want is right there. And it's like, please just give us just once. Can we just have where we just kill them?
Was last September not enough for you? Beating them once in the season wasn't enough? You wanted 6 points off.
We're saying the last time that they beat Man United twice in the season is again, Jurassic era.
Yeah. Aston Villa could possibly have won it, but then again, coming from 2-0 down, it's a pretty good result in that context.
Pretty exciting from that perspective. We'll talk about that with Vinny Perth a little bit later on. But at 5 minutes past 8, I'm delighted to say Ronan O'Gara is with us this morning. Ronan, good morning to you. How are you?
Sorry, sneaking a last bite.
No worries. Are you an athlete when it comes to nutrition, or is it
No. I train I train to eat or I eat to train. I enjoy my food.
French croissants for breakfast or?
No, that's banned. Maybe once or twice a week, but not. You can't be having them 7 days a week. They're too good.
We keep hearing about the new managers coming into English football and taking the nice stuff like the desserts out and the ketchup and the Coke and all that kind of stuff. Rugby's different obviously because you want your players to maintain bulk and stuff. Are you force feeding them like the foie gras, or are you? No,
it's interesting. I remember arriving in, obviously, first time leaving Ireland was in 2013, going to Racing, and I suppose on the tables there was butter. When we were in Munster, you wouldn't really be allowed butter. And there was kind of 2 litres of Coke on the tables, which was like, wow, this is there's a little bit of a difference in education here or in standards, and obviously when you're coming out of the player mindset, you're very probably short-fused and open to kind of going, wow, that was terrible. But there was something that stays with me, obviously, to this day, the fact that I think it has got really, really, really professional. I think there's a big emphasis with the individual, but teams would obviously have their own nutritionists, dietitians. Everything is very much top notch. But in France, I think you can really, there is the capacity to slip under the radar, get away with it a little bit, and it's evident in our canteen as we speak. I think we have pancakes, we have crispy bacon. There's
sounds great.
It's not great. There is obviously some guys are trying to gain weight, and other guys then need to shift that weight. And as we said, the croissants isn't a good weight. That's for certain.
I was going to say, my understanding of French breakfast is like a bowl of chocolate milk and a croissant. It's it doesn't, modern dietary tendencies would suggest that's not the best combination.
Yeah, and that's another, I suppose, probably draw for home as well. The fact that they don't do a breakfast really over here, and the fact that, as you say, it's a bowl of hot milk with cocoa. Dip your pan au chocolat or your croissant into it, a little bit of natural yogurt with a few sachets of sugar to put a bit of life into it, and if you wanted to superset it with a little bit of maybe framboise, fraise, the strawberry flavoured
gloop
flavouring, then that's it. But there's nothing like a few poached eggs with a brown bread and a nice coffee. But I don't know how we've got off in this.
We're making everybody hungry here this morning. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the competition. You guys had a win in, I think it was pretty foggy, but no doubt about the result against Bath. So obviously feeling pretty good about life this morning.
Yeah, we were very good for 50 odd minutes, and then we stopped playing. We kind of had conceded 2 really bizarre tries. It was very foggy, but that doesn't probably explain the fact that we were on the attack and inside the Bath 22 with a driving maul, and all of a sudden Bath had stolen the ball twice and tore up the pitch with it and scored 2 very good tries. I don't know how they got the ball. I kind of looking into it this morning, but I still haven't the wiser. So it was good. It was good, Gerald. We constructed our performance, I think, which was important in Europe, in the fact that obviously Bath are struggling really badly. But I think it was a 32-0 at one stage, which was impressive in the fact that it was obviously 0 more so than 32.
When you're picking a team for the game this week, like how are you managing players and how are you making sure that, like, is your desire to get a performance and inject more momentum into the season and keep winning in this competition? Because it seemed like a lot of the French teams, just some of them decided, right, this is B team territory. Montpellier obviously did, and for you, like, I know you've got a long-standing relationship with the tournament, and it's important for big opportunity for the club as well. So what goes into your thinking when you're deciding how strong a team you're going to pick for that game?
Yeah, that's a great question, because of obviously the way the competition is structured, with the kind of results that have been awarded. In some case, you mean Montpellier getting 5 points. That's the 5 points which has been gifted to them by the competition, because they've played. That's the only game. The Leinster game is the only game that they've played, if I'm correct. Montpellier, isn't it? So, but they have a match nul or a draw and awarded 5 points. No, they've had a game against Leinster that they were alright at 5 points. They go to the RDS and they got stuffed, and then they were to play another game, Exeter away, I think.
Yeah.
And that was 2 points, is it? So they have 7 points. Is that correct?
They were beaten 42-6 by Exeter.
Yes, sorry, exactly. That was the thing. I'm thinking. Well done, on. Yes, exactly. So they've played the 2 games. But there were 1 game that they haven't played, in which technically they have played, according to the competition, gives them 5 points. So in Europe they haven't really shown up to play a game at this stage, but they receive Exeter this weekend, and if they were to get a result there, they qualify. So I think it's very very, very difficult to understand how to go about this weekend, because if you are looking at 4 games, usually the cream rises to the top, in the fact that if you played 4 games on the pitch, you have a fair idea that you want to be probably in the first 3 of your group, so you avoid the better teams in the other group. But at this stage, when you look at the tables this morning, it's very, very difficult to understand how it could finish up. And it doesn't really matter if you win the game this weekend, in the fact that, well, there's a lot of good teams, but Toulouse get beaten at the weekend by Wasp. It was a brilliant performance by Wasp, but they have a game cancelled as well. We have a game from Bath where you fancy yourselves winning that game away from home, but you end up getting 2 points. So there are so many different, I suppose, conundrums going on. So, but for this weekend, I think what the message you take out from last weekend is, yeah, you've rested players from a Montpellier point of view, but the club takes an absolute hammering, and a lot of mentalities take a huge bruising and battering in that regard. So I don't think there are any winners from that game, Leinster included, in the fact that they would have liked probably a better game, even though they will go to Bath this weekend. It'll be much more competitive than the team they played, but that isn't. It was probably hard to watch. From my point of view, understanding the magic of the Champions Cup, there was no magic on show yesterday.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate we've got to this situation, and notwithstanding the fact that COVID exists, and just maybe to come out and zoom out from this year's tournament, it feels a little bit like we all need to sit around and remind everybody about the importance of this competition, because even if look at the sports ground and Leicester coming back and winning, right? It's bad for Connacht. It's great for the tournament. It's great for Leicester. It's like they obviously really felt like this was something worth fighting for and digging in for. And even Northampton were really desperate to score in the last minute against Ulster in that game as well. So there's loads of teams who are still taking this seriously, it feels like.
Yeah, and that's a hugely important point for, I think, the more you probably travel and get around, you understand that the Champions Cup means very different things to an awful lot of people. I think, for people in Ireland to even consider what Montpellier did, they just are probably up in arms about the team they put out there. But I think there's always a context to what is happening. From Montpellier's point of view, they're fourth in the top 14. They're going really well in that competition, and they feel like, I think this is the competition they want to go after. I think for the French clubs like Toulouse, Racing, most definitely those two, Clermont as well, there's a kind of, I suppose, a tradition established with the Champions Cup. Those three teams will always go after silverware in Europe because they believe in the magic of the Champions Cup. For other teams, Cast to a point as well, they have a long history in the competition. Cast changed their team. Yeah, they had 14 changes, and it was probably more their second team than first team, but at least it was their professional squad, and they have values in that squad, and they play hard for each other, and they fronted up and they pushed Munster really to the wire on Friday night. But for other teams that I suppose don't have, I suppose, that emotional attachment with the competition, you could see with Montpellier that there was more an academy team, and as a result they got blown out of the water, and their probably club's reputation is damaged as a result. I think the La Rochelles, the Bordeaux, other teams like that, they want to get to that level where Europe means something for them, and I think once you've tasted that personally or as a club, I think your value as well will always remain intact.
Ron, can we chat about Munster on Friday night? I mean, you're somebody obviously who has great admiration for Jack Crowley, and now people are starting to see why over the last couple of weeks in particular. On Friday night, it wasn't even just about the kicking, it was the carries, it was the tackling. I think he was the top tackler for Munster on Friday night. How much of it, about your attraction to Jack Crowley and trying to get him to La Rochelle last year, was based on his open play and what he did outside of being a kicker?
Yeah, well, you don't want it to be top tackler. That's something you need to change straight away, because you want your key player driving your attack, and you need him trying to, I suppose, restore his energy levels when the opposition have the ball. But opposition teams are smart and they get at the 10. But he didn't shirk in that environment. Yeah, I think he was very composed. He looks. I think. The one attribute you look in young players is do they have time in the ball? When you watch geez, I'm after having
Crowley.
Sorry, Jack Crowley, exactly. Yeah. Sorry. When you watch Jack, you're for me, the first thing that strikes me, he looks very composed and he looks to have time in the ball. And I think that's the attribute that I always look for in young halfbacks. And I think He made errors in the game against Ulster the week before. He made errors at the weekend, but the good thing about it doesn't seem to affect him mentally. And he's kind of moves on to his kind of next ball focus, and he stays very much in the kind of short-term moment. His kicking, that's a difficult pitch to kick on too for people that wouldn't understand that. It's the underfoot is, it's not a hybrid pitch, so it would be a winter pitch where it'd be difficult to get through the ball and cast, and but he was very, very composed off the tee, and I thought he marshalled his team really, really well.
That marshalling of the team is interesting, because there was a moment late in the game when Donegal O'Callaghan was saying on TV that Crowley should have taken more ownership over a moment about whether to go for the post, to go for the corner, that the decision was not left up to Peter O'Mahony, but Peter O'Mahony takes the decision to go for the corner, and it seems as if Crowley is being directed by O'Mahony, which seemed completely understandable if he's a young out half. But regardless of your age, if you're the out half, do you need to be making that decision, or at least trying to inform that decision?
Not necessarily, because I think I think there was probably a little bit more to that decision on the fact that I think if Munster kicked the points, it was still a 6-point game, wasn't it? So, like, I would prefer maybe to go to the corner in that regard, the fact that you just keep ownership of the ball 80 metres from your own goal line, as opposed to, you kick the penalty, but cast window restart and they're an all-out attack for 5+2. You know, beats your 6 points. So it depends really how you see the game in that regard. Are you better off keeping their foot on the throat in their 22 or 15 metres from their line with possession of a driving maul, which Munster are very good at, and their close combat game is very good. I think what you want there is probably the guy with experience making that decision. In the fact that I don't think that's a Jack Crowley call, to be fair.
Yeah, that it is an O'Mahony decision, isn't it? It's like, you know, he's the leader. He's going to make the decision. We're going for this. Let's go. Everybody up. You know, you kind of
necessarily don't have to score there, Ger. The reality is you just want to hold ball and keep ball and make sure you don't probably get turned over or give a penalty away. So the next play then is a line out 50 metres out for casting possession. What you want to do there is the ability to win the ball, set a good drive, try and suck a penalty out of the opposition, or just get into kind of your rumbling game, which Munster are very good at.
Ronan, just about Munster generally, right? You'd have a fair idea of the available vacancies around the world. It's just kind of everybody keeps an eye on it. The Munster job must be one of the best available jobs out there at the moment, is it? Like
without a shadow of a doubt, I think hugely attractive and slipping into the territory of maybe becoming a little bit of a sleeping giant, but it kind of, the most important thing is Munster are winning games, and they're winning tight games. You look at what they did against Ulster and you look at the thing against Cass. I think people are frustrated with the style of the game that's being played, because I would probably be a believer that there is some incredibly good players on the road over there, and I think in the fact that for so many number of years now that they've probably plateaued, they've probably underperformed. I think that job would be hugely attractive to potential suitors.
Yeah, so the talent pool is there to attract talent, attract good, top quality coaching talent.
Yeah, I think you just look at the back line as, you know, I mean, you have Conor Murray, and then at the other end of the scale you have
Craig Casey.
Craig Casey, sorry, I'm not forgetting his name. I'm bad morning with the names. I've been going through my own effective this morning. And then you have obviously you've three really good 10s. You Dialandi. You look at Rory at 12. You've two 13s that are really good in the back three. There's so much competition. So I think from the back, Munster are always traditionally good up front. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of back roads. You look at Hodnett coming into the game the last day, and that charge probably changed the kind of energy of the game. Gave Munster a big footing in the cast territory, and you think that that there is an awful lot within that group that can come out still yet.
I just want to ask you about Ulster. There's a generation of backs that they have who are kind of aged between 24, Balakoon's 24, and then 21. Doak started the game obviously as scrum half because Cooney was injured, but McElroy looked really good. Larry was sensational with a one-handed pickup that helped set up the try. They played with a lot of confidence and physical aggression, even the smaller of the guys, but it's kind of, I don't know. Is it too early for them for us to start thinking Ireland? Like, should we see Balakoon starting a big game in the Six Nations? Is it time to stick Doak in the Ireland squad? How do you get those lads in to see if they're ready or going to be ready in 18 months' time?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think probably consistently Hume is ahead of all of them in the fact that I think he's been very, very impressive for a number of months now, pushing beyond probably the 6-month period since. Well, certainly, I suppose I've been tracking him anyway. He looks very good. His capacity to beat the first defender again yesterday in Northampton was very interesting. And necessarily, I was thinking maybe he works really well with. I'm after the Big 12. Yes, McCluskey. Yeah, exactly. Those two together were a beautiful foil for each other. But obviously, yesterday he was playing with a different centre partnership, and he looked really good as well. Doak has a really good game and consistently seems to be performing well. Lowry at 15, 10, really good ball player, and Balakoon. They look ready. Yeah, I agree with that. I think from being in that situation a few times and seeing it is the fact that the damage, I suppose, Ulster did to themselves by not getting a result in Thomond Park when Munster were down to 14. I think that confirms or it really plays on probably managers, coaches' mind, in the fact that they were being talked up because the week previously to Ulster, or the Munster game, Ulster put on a big performance by beating, who was it?
In Europe or the Leinster?
Yeah, it was
It was like Northampton was before Christmas, obviously, as well.
No, it was. They had beaten Ulster or Leinster, wasn't it? In the
they beaten Leinster, yeah.
Or the Aviva.
Yeah, they'd beaten Leinster in Dublin, yeah, and then they had the disappointing defeat to Ospreys, and then it went into Europe.
Okay, and then they went down to Munster, and with 14 men, you were thinking, okay, well, now this is a golden opportunity for Ulster, and they didn't close out the deal. So it was like, oh, well, has this team progressed, or are they learning lessons? But when you look at what they've done, Claremont away is the game I was thinking of.
Sorry, yeah.
Claremont away.
It's like an addition to the crappy quiz.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit worried because my brain isn't working too well this morning, but at least I've rectified myself with that comment. The Claremont game was the game that stood out for me, which was played at an intense tempo, and they blitzed them for the first 20 minutes. But then you look at that away from home, and then they go to Thomond Park and Munster down to 14 men, and they can't get the job done. The same question marks remained in my head, but even yesterday, the fact that it was just as well that they were 10 points clear with whatever 6 minutes to go, because the way
Northampton. The centre.
Yeah. Oh well. Not a good morning. Hutchinson, exactly, yes, sorry. A brilliant line, but untouched off first phase, which is rare to see. An incredible line, obviously, but Ulster would be disappointed with conceding that. But they had enough to close out that. That's a big win away from home in one context, but then you look at what Racing did to Northampton at home. Northampton at home, Racing away from home, and they completely dismantled Northampton. So I think there's a little bit of review needed into that performance. I thought they look very good. The backs look sharp. They look exciting. The pitching, I think, in Franklin's Gardens brings out the best in a lot of the attacking backs. And I think because Claremont will come to Ravenhill looking to win, so that'll be a good test this weekend for Ulster.
We'll keep a very close eye on that, Ronan. We'll let you go get some brain food this morning. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Talk to you later. That's Ronan O'Gara giving us his thoughts on the weekend's rugby. Interesting too. The quality of the pitch is something he talks about a lot. The kicking pitch, not a kicking pitch in Cast. Franklin's Gardens is a great place for attacking rugby. It's stuff that you just don't know unless like you're going to these grounds and you're like seeing that. I didn't realise that it was seen traditionally as a good place, because if you haven't watched the highlights, there's like it's funny, the highlights of the Munster game on YouTube were like 2 minutes, and the highlights of the Ulster game were 7 minutes, and the highlights of the Connacht game were like 14 minutes because there's so much action and activity in it. But the Ulster back play was sensational. Like really, wow, this is... You feel like you'd like to see them play for Ireland, you know?
Yeah, and you'd wonder, is it a sense that these guys now together will form a pretty impressive backline for the foreseeable future? The problem is that the most important facet of the backline is still up in the air over the next little while. Obviously, they got Billy Burns and Ian Madigan, and it's not a bad option right now, but who is the solution at 10 in the long term to play alongside these current 20 to 24 year olds? That is a massive thing for them. And also, when Will Addison comes back, I mean, like, he's the only person in that backline who has proven himself to be of international standard. Granted, there is a few of those guys are going to prove themselves at that level. Balogun has obviously got his opportunity before, and he is more than likely going to take it over the next little while. But Addison probably gets back into that backline whenever he's back. So there are a couple of questions still to be answered there. And then for Ulster as a whole, it's obviously up front where the biggest ones are going to lie. Adding Dwayne Vermeulen to the squad this year, not a bad solution at all. You've got to be looking at Ulster and thinking they're in the same realm as Munster, as in silverware, or it's a little bit of a disappointment. I mean, maybe not this season, but
it's getting
definitely next year.
It's definitely getting close to that, where like how long does a squad like Ulster, how much leeway do you say, oh, that's okay, you're fine, you're building, the transition is continuing? To transition to what? Transition to being a quarter-final team, a top 6 team? They should be looking for silverware. You know, they have a lot of the same benefits that we keep saying Irish rugby is completely imbalanced because Leinster have the Leinster school system, Ulster has the Ulster school system, and needs to start leaning on these players. But they're starting to get a slew of players through. They're not just cast-offs from Leinster anymore. There are a lot of these players who've come through their own system, and it's that generation who are going to have to carry them. And what's their ceiling, I suppose? And the ceiling of Lowry and Balogun and McElroy and Doak looks really high the morning after a game where... was it Saturday or was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
It was yesterday. Where a game like that happens. It was late yesterday evening, so maybe a lot of people won't have seen this.
There would have been dual screening with the Ulster GAA potentially.
Super exciting. So you should be excited about that. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. We have Vinny Perth coming up around about 8:35. We're going to talk to Cora Staunton down in Australia as well. We'll get her thoughts. She officially became the oldest player to play a WAFL game over the course of the weekend, scoring again, as you would expect. We'll also get her thoughts on just how excited Mayo people should be about Oisin Mullin as well. Shane says, we've got to talk about the job that Wayne Rooney is doing at Derby given the circumstances. Like, again, Wayne Rooney would be mad to take the Everton gig right now, because what he's doing at Derby might be the greatest story that's ever happened in English football. Like if he overcomes a 21-point deficit to stay in the division,
it would be remarkable. I'm just looking at it here. So what is it? 9 points between them and safety at the moment, and we're still 12 to 14. No, that's my maths is all wrong. Sorry, we're still about 20 games left to go. Sorry. There's a lot of time for them to keep this up. Obviously, the win against Sheffield United was a remarkable win. Like, I mean, where did Derby County finish without the points deduction? Mid-table?
They're on the fringes of the playoff. They're like, if you add the 21 points, they'd be 10th or 11th at the moment. But the division is obviously so condensed. So 6th would be realistic. On the current run of form they're in, people will be talking about them as a playoff team.
Yeah, like they'd be 10th at the moment if you added the 21 points. I forgot that would actually be a good mathematical way of looking at where they would be. Clearly, I'm suffering from the early morning as well. But like the biggest story in English football, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. But whenever you see points deduction, you see relegation.
You overcome 21 points and don't get relegated.
It's remarkable.
Wait, sorry. The whole point you've got to remember is that they have to sell players. They can barely register players. Like Rooney's looking around the first day of training, breaks the leg of one of his best players. It's like, when you add it all in, that would be a good 30 for 30.
Oh, 100%. I hope there's some sort of flying the wall documentary going on about this. I mean, like, Derby County, no strangers to the fact of being surreptitiously spied on. So hopefully that there's somebody sent by Frank Lampard to hang in the bushes to take footage for this Netflix documentary of this Derby County season, because it will be a great story. So around them, it's Peterborough, Reading, Cardiff City. They've already managed to leapfrog Barnsley, so they're not on the foot of the table anymore.
Exactly, that was the one that got them off the bottom of the table. Flying Fish says, go on, Owen. Great scramble defence, frantically Googling rosters and schedules for Rog.
Yeah.
keeps you on your toes.
All you can hear is the typing.
Pat Gallagher says, Lee's not getting a mention. What? Missing 10 senior players before the game started, lose 2 more to hamstring injuries after 20 minutes, and have to give 2 more Premier League debuts to teens and still be the team in the top 4. Lee's performance of the weekend absolutely should have been in the performance rankings. And I'm delighted because there was this kind of Bielsa, are they going to get rid? I really hope they're not going to get rid, and that they give them another opportunity to see what happens if they have a striker who can score goals. If Bamford comes back and a hat-trick from somebody the weekend is great, but it does mean that it's one more player. Rafinha again played brilliantly, so it doesn't look like Rafinha is going to go in this window. So very exciting for them, I'm sure. Bobby Dwyer, our resident Spurs fan, only tuning in now, but I called it on Friday, Gerard, that Arsenal would be cowards and not play the derby. I had flights and tickets for the game. Disgusting by them in the Premier League. Very unfair on the fans.
Oh God, that is brutal. Sorry to hear about his troubles, but Arsenal just playing by the rules that everybody else seems to have set over the course of the season. It is pretty pathetic, to be fair. One COVID case and they're like, yeah, we want our game called off in a week where they sent 2 of their younger stars out on loan. Maitland-Niles not that young anymore, but Balogun pretty young, sending them out on loan, and seeing Leeds with a bench full of nobody kids. Could Arsenal have done the same thing? They absolutely could have.
Yeah.
But did Arsenal do the same thing that 19 other clubs, maybe not 19, but a whole swathe of other clubs had done over the course of the season? That's what they decided to do. Basically, Arsenal said, you get a postponement, we get one too. And they felt that they had this joker up the sleeve all year, and they were going to play it because from the start of the season, that game against Brentford, they felt that they were screwed over. Last week, in the game against Liverpool and all the false positives, they feel that they were screwed over. So this week they were like, no, screw you, we're the ones who are going to do the screwing this time. But I accept that in isolation it didn't look good. Alright,
it's a lot of screwing. 8:35 this morning here on OTBAM. If you've just joined us, you've missed a great show so far. You can get it all back on the podcast, or of course if you're on the app, we'll send you a little message to say, oh look, we're live, come and join the party. Joining the party right now is Vinny Perth. Vinny, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, how are you doing, man?
Let's start with Rafa Benitez. Rafa issued a lengthy enough statement saying he was really kind of unaware of just how bad the situation was at the club, how difficult it would be for him to overcome, and then obviously you have COVID, you've got injuries. Have you any sympathy for Rafa in this scenario, or did he actually kind of make the situation worse with some of his decisions along the way? What's your take on the Benitez era?
I think it's a mixture of all that stuff. There's no doubt Everton, similar to Leeds, had a really bad injury early on in the season. Only started the season, first couple of games really well, but huge amount of injuries. Richarlison was out of late, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who was a big way of how they play, was a huge loss for them. Centre half. Yermina was out injured as well. They've had a couple of bad injuries, and so the luck hasn't gone your way. But that's often the way when you lose your job. Managers look for excuses, and some of them are real excuses. But ultimately, I think the decision to appoint Rafa Benitez was a strange one. There's no doubt he's a an outstanding manager, but and even in all the money and all the stuff that washes around football, there is still a thing around culture, around what fans mean to clubs, and especially a club like Everton. The fans just never took to him, and I don't think they were ever going to take to him. I think it was a massive risk by the board, and it's one that ultimately hasn't paid off. And there were a lot of anger from the fans now towards the board as a result of this. So they've shot themselves in the foot as a club, big time. And it's a long way back for them to repair the damage of the last couple of years, because they spent a huge amount of money, close to $500 million. And it's a long way back for what is a big club in English football terms. I was lucky enough to grow up in the 80s. Remember people like when they won the league title, and you go back to them, Adrian Heath and Graham Sharp and Kevin Sheedy. They were a big club, and it's a long way back for them to rebuild from where they are.
Yeah, they went toe-to-toe with the great Liverpool team of the 80s and actually beat them in a league and pushed them to really high heights, won a Cup Winners' Cup when that trophy still existed. And it never felt like the current ownership had a vision about how to get back there. It always feels like they'll make a decision on the current manager and then that'll go wrong, and they'll make a decision on another manager who doesn't really seem to be part of the same plan. Like, I don't know what the Everton culture is. I don't know what their identity is, what their plan is, how they want to play.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, cultures come and go. I mean, I heard Roy Keane bring up culture yesterday, and sometimes it's a lazy word, but it does mean a lot to people in football. But cultures in terms of your club can change. I mean, we always heard about the West Ham way of playing for years and years. Yeah, you know, how long ago was it that West Ham were this great footballing team? You know, back to maybe 60s, 70s. But they don't have to look too far to a club like West Ham. How, funny enough, it's come full circle. Someone like David Moyes has put a new culture back into that club. And West Ham were very much like Everton for a long period of time over the last number of years. But you can see young players coming through at West Ham. You can see a togetherness around the club, around the team. And it takes a manager and ultimately a club and a director of football, all of them things that, you know, it take a long time to explain. But even another club like Brighton have done it. And Everton must be envious of clubs like West Ham and Brighton, who seem to have the whole club on the right pathway, on the same page, everyone singing off the same hymn sheet. And it doesn't take a huge amount of work, ironically, with the money they have to fix it. It just takes time. And the good thing on Everton's side is that I think they've got a set of fans or a set of people that follow them that will give them that time if they can see progress. And if they appoint a manager over a 3 or 4 year period, I think they'll get the backing to make those changes within the club. So it can be done. And as I said, don't have to look too far away for examples of how it was done. West Ham and Brighton are two that spring to mind, where just getting the culture, the structure in the club right, all the way from the top to the bottom. And because I know a lot about under 23 football, for argument's sake. They've a hell of an under 23 setup. They're generally one of the best under 23s in the Premier League too. And so they have got certain parts of the club right. It's just when you chop and change managers so often and you get different. Rafa's obviously a divisive character. We can see that with the way Dina left the club to Villa last week. And it's not what they need at the moment. They need somebody that's really calm and sound and takes a long-term view of the club.
And it might well be Roberto Martinez that they bring in to the role. So say, Vinny, if we have Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola, and I'm not sure who else you'd have there, in the top rung of managers in the world, how many rungs below that is Roberto Martinez, in your view?
Yeah, it's hard to know because he manages one of the great sides of Belgium in terms of the star quality they have, but ultimately haven't won a trophy. I was listening to Sky Sports last night, and one of the former players at Everton was quite critical, but I put that down to he sort of left around that time. His time at Everton was mixed. He started very well, and ultimately he lost his job, and things went downhill from there. I think he took over from David Moyes. So it is a difficult one to say. Martinez is the type of guy, a bit like a Brendan Rodgers, where he'll get into the club and he'll help fix the whole club from top to bottom, and he'll be very thoughtful, and he'll leave no stone unturned. I think that's what they need now. There will be calls for other people. I've seen the likes of Graham Potter mentioned, why would he leave a club like Brighton, and the security of it to Everton would make no sense. But Martinez looks like a real safe pair of hands that can take a long-term view. But just how good he is, I don't know, because you have to question why. And you're talking about final moments at European Championships and World Cups at the highest level. I accept that, but that Belgium side haven't really looked like winning a tournament, and with the quality he has had over the last number of years, that would leave a little question mark on him. But if they appointed him, I would say that was an excellent appointment.
I would feel a little bit. I'd feel a little. Sorry to interrupt, Vinny, but for me, the decision from Martinez to take the Everton gig would be, for me, a bit of a black mark, because it's like this Belgium side has a really realistic chance of winning a World Cup, and if he wins a World Cup, I'm not saying he'll get any job after that, but there's a chance he might get one of the super club jobs. Certainly, maybe in Italy, maybe in Spain. You know, like who knows who the next Atletico manager is going to be when the Simeone era eventually ends. Like those gigs are all potential for him. But if he comes into Everton, it's such a shit show. Like there's no guarantee.
Yeah, and Jerry, just on that, he was very close to getting the Real Madrid job, believe it or not, a couple of years ago. So he is obviously held in that high regard. So it is one of them where I accept that. The only counter argument to that is, I don't know the exact figures, but check the salary of the Belgium head coach as opposed to the salary of the Everton coach. I would say it's probably a 5, 6, 7-fold increase in his wages. So there is that to look at. I'm not saying that's the right decision, but I agree with you. I'd love, if I was a coach, I'd love a chance to win a World Cup European Championship with this Belgium side. And I think if he'd done it, I think he's young enough for that to open up a huge amount of opportunities for him. But sometimes the boat is there, and if you don't jump on, it passes you by and you don't get another opportunity. And that's why managers sometimes make bad decisions and take the wrong choice in the next club.
It seems like a pretty obvious point to make, Vinny, but why would Martinez be a good appointment if he was already sacked by the club?
Yeah, I have a bit of history of that myself. Why? Because in fairness, he's not somebody who, he's not a divisive character. You wouldn't feel that he's fell out with a lot of people at Everton. He's got a way of playing that, you feel that Everton would like that type of style of play, of the history of the club. Plays more or less a 3-4-2-1, similar to what Chelsea do. He does that at Belgium. He's got a hell of a lot of good players to do that with. He's still a young, they would consider him innovative type of coach. So we don't know what went on when he lost his job. There's new owners there, a lot more money. He did take over David Moyes that was very strong. But at the same time, someone like him you could see is a steady pair of hands. And as I say, Everton just need to rebuild over a 2, 3, 4 year period. And they went and chased the top 4 a couple of years ago and spent a lot of money. But the gap now is even bigger than it ever was. So they probably need somebody like that with a safe pair of hands, good way of playing football, not a divisive character, just come away from the headlines a little bit. But remember, they did attract someone like Carlo Ancelotti not that long ago. So
it's a fair point. Maybe he's looking at that and saying Ancelotti used it as a way to get the Real Madrid gig, and maybe he sees it something similar. I want to move on to the Man City Chelsea game.
Yeah.
Where's Tuchel at the moment? What's going on with him? Why has he not been able to get the best performances from Chelsea, particularly over the last couple of months?
Yeah, it was interesting. This was fascinating for me the other day because he started Lukaku and that's fine. I mean, Lukaku, big money signing. They spent what was 100 million on him, but I think he's in danger of becoming another sort of statistic at Man City, which seems strange. He's only in the job 12 months, or at Chelsea, because they do like to chop and change their manager, and it has worked at different stages. When he first came in, for me, he's one of the best in the world. He's been a breath of fresh air. But he had the sort of the beating of Man City team. If you remember Champions League final, he started Timo Werner up front. The FA Cup semi-final, he completely outplayed City. If City are vulnerable in any way, for me, it's on the counter-attack. I think you can get both their centre-halves with pace. But Lukaku gave them nothing the other day, and it was a strange team he selected. He's left out Mason Mount as well, who creates a lot for them. So as much as this is madness, the history of Chelsea tells you his form over the last 10, 11 games has been so bad that you wouldn't be shocked, or it wouldn't be massive. Well, it would be massive news, but it wouldn't be a big shock if Chelsea made a change over the next 4-6 weeks if results didn't improve. The way they've fallen from the top down, the only advantage he has is they're going to stay as a Champions League team. When Frank Lampard lost his job, I think they were 8th or 9th. So that's the difference. But his form has been so bad that it's sort of questioned whether Chelsea will stay, because they are that team that likes to chop and change managers, and it's worked for them. In all fairness, they got rid of Lampard and Tuchel goes and wins the Champions League. But the way the signing of Lukaku has left a lot of questions for me in terms of the style of play. Last year it was brilliant. Timo Werner, people questioned him. He's not a brilliant finisher, I get that. But the way they played the other day was alarming. And hopefully, from their point of view, it's only a one-off.
I hear Rafa Benitez is looking for a job at the moment, so if Tuchel does get the sack, there's someone there. Like on Lukaku, it is fascinating because the manager has to take some blame for this signing, I suspect, considering Tuchel, I'd imagine, was at least asked about, do you want Lukaku? Maybe not. Maybe Chelsea is such a weird situation, but it does seem that the way Tuchel wants to play, Vinny, is it's not conducive to Lukaku's strengths. Is that fair enough, or is that absolving Lukaku of poor form?
One or two things. One is I think Tuchel had a bit of a go after the match. If you remember, he sort of rolled John Stones early in the game, ended up a 3v2 situation, and he just picked out the wrong pass to Pulisic. But he should have done better in that situation. But there was two instances where Pulisic should have put him through. But Chelsea didn't play to his strengths, and his strength is ball into feet. He's actually quite quick in behind, but they didn't give him a lot of good service. There was opportunities to give him service, and Chelsea went away from how they beat City a couple of times 6 months ago, and that was the big thing for me. If you're going to play Lukaku, then maybe Mason Mount, because of how good he is in terms of picking out a pass, would really help them. But I just felt City just bossed them. They put them under pressure, and they didn't have that pace in behind. As I said, where City vulnerable, if anywhere, they're that good, is the two centre halves can sometimes be isolated, and I don't think it played up to Lukaku's strengths. And if you look at the game, I think he touched the ball something like 22 times in the whole game. So, if he's not going to give you a real threat in behind, what is he giving you? And what ultimately happened is, because of City's false nine, the position that Foden played and the movement of Kevin De Bruyne, it meant that Kante, Kovacic, Pulisic, Ziyech were sort of defensive midfielders, the four of them running different places, and Chelsea never got a platform. And I think Tuchel has blamed Lukaku for not holding the ball up, which he didn't do well. But some of the link-up play was poor, and it's the first time I would say Tuchel has made a real mistake for me since he's come into the club, and he's paid a heavy price for it, because I think that defeat rules them out of the title race completely now.
Is there a legitimate argument to be made about the cultural differences in English football compared to, say, Italian football? Because you talk about using Lukaku as a focal point. That didn't work at Manchester United either, and it was a very different Lukaku that we saw in Italy, not because necessarily of the style of the league, but because I guess the style of Conte and having Martinez beside him, and also being the spearhead of the attack, not holding up the ball, actually getting on the end of attacks and scoring goals. Like it does seem that like those differences are quite stark. So it begs the question: A, why Chelsea signed him, but B, why Manchester United played in such a way with Lukaku in their team, and why Chelsea are playing in such a way with Lukaku in their team at the moment.
Yeah, and probably the answer isn't, I don't think, is as blunt as Italian football against English football. I think it's the stylistic. It's about the manager. But again, going back to that word, whether it's the right word, culture in your club and how you want to play. I mean, when you over the last 12 months, you probably think, what did United need? They probably needed a Lukaku type for Rashford and Greenwood to play off at different stages, but they were never going to sign him back. They just let him go. His form for Inter Milan was sensational. There's no doubt about it, and for Belgium. So you can understand with all the money Chelsea have to burn why they went after somebody. Timo Werner wasn't necessarily working out for them. Probably felt he needed goals in that team. So it makes sense. It is a difficult one to answer, because there's no doubt the Premiership now is as good as it's ever been. It's the best league in the world. But it's a league that's built on speed and power. I would say most centre-halves are really, really quick. Most midfielders, fullbacks are really, really quick all the way down the league, by and large, to some exceptions to it. So you know, I think you have to beat teams in a different way. It's not just about that. Where I watch a lot of BT show, a good bit of Italian football, and the centre halves, I would say, a little bit slower, for want of a better word, and therefore he was able to get in behind maybe a little bit more. But I think it's more stylistic of what your manager wants and the style of which you want to play. I thought he was a good fit for Chelsea, to be fair, but for whatever reason, it's just not working out. I think the loss of Reece James and Chiswell at fullback, I think the two of them are big loss because of the service they would provide for him. And as I said, Mason Mount for me was a big loss for them on Saturday, the game, which didn't help him.
Vinny, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. Thank you.
Vinny Perk giving us some thoughts on the big stories from the weekend. Really, Rafa sacked by Everton and Man City beating Chelsea. We'll come back to Man United and Villa and Liverpool and all the rest of that a little bit later on in the week. It's 8:54 this morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We do quick newspaper headlines for you. We start with OTBSports.com. The Ivory Coast goalkeeper suffers howler of all howlers at the worst time. It's in the AFCON. Player ratings from the Ulster game. Munster improving but still not good enough, and Benitez sacked. They're the main stories on OTBSports.com. The Daily Mirror. If at first you don't succeed, try, and try again. That's their headline on the Leinster piece, which is pretty good. After mulling it over, I will not leave Mayo for Geelong.
The news this morning, the winning lotto ticket has come from Castlebar. Narrowed down.
Get Mart.
Get Smart.
Hey, there you go. Do you know what it is?
Yes. Get Smart is a movie.
Close. Hit the crossbar, Owen.
Get Smart is a television show.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. But did I say movie? I meant television show.
You never saw it?
No, but
Maxwell Smart.
Get Smart is a movie.
99. Yeah, but it's not really.
It is.
No, I mean, there was a remake for your generation who were, you know, who missed out on the cultural phenomenon that is Get Smart.
I thought I just know the I've only ever heard of it in the context of Steve Carell.
Okay. Cora Staunton is with us this morning. Cora, good morning, good evening to you. How are you?
I'm not too bad now, all good.
Yeah, look, we're just talking about the lotto winner coming from Castlebar. Bigger news than the fact that 19 million is making its way to Mayo is that Oisin Mullin has decided to stay. What's your reaction when you heard this news?
Yeah, obviously I was surprised. I was disappointed I haven't won the 19 million anyways. That's first off. And it wasn't me, I can tell you that. Yeah, but it's great it's gone to Mayo. Yeah, and obviously on the Oisin Mullin news, yeah, obviously big news in Ireland, and it's big news here today as well. It's been all over the AFL media. So I'm sure Geelong are disappointed, obviously, not to be picking up Oisin, but obviously from a Mayo point of view, and obviously being a Mayo fan, it's a huge boost to the county to have him back. Whatever the situation it might be, you know, obviously decided long and hard. You know, obviously we thought he was gone, and now he's not. So yeah, it's a huge boost to Mayo and their aspirations to try and finally win Sam.
So there was genuine hype around Mullin down there.
Yeah, obviously it broke first. I had it from the Irish media, it broke first, but yeah. This morning, then when you went on, the situation it might be, you know, obviously decided long and hard. You know, obviously we thought he was gone. Yeah, it's big news in the AFL media over here. And their aspirations.
Oh, are you streaming us live there as well at the same time, Cora? We're hearing a bit of feedback.
No, I'm not. No.
Okay, it must be on our side. Because there was a hype video that Geelong released when he was signed, and I guess not that many people turned down the opportunity to go and play. You know, we had Breach Stack on last week, and we'll talk to you about her in a moment. But you know, it's long been the dream of young Irish people to go off to Australia, have a bit of sun on your back, and play a bit of professional sport. So obviously a big decision, and I guess maybe Australia are feeling a little bit of rejection.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. It's a big decision for, you know, a guy. He's 21. He's won, you know, 2 Young Footballer of the Year. You know, I'm sure there's been a lot of pressure on him over the last number of weeks from the Mayo public in particular. You know, he's quite a different, you know, type of character to a lot of footballers. You know, he stays in his own little corner, and I'm sure he felt a lot of pressure. Obviously he was playing with his club Kilmaine as well, and they lost. I think it was a county semi-final, and I can imagine there was huge pressure on his shoulders, especially with obviously Mayo being very close to winning the All Ireland in the last number of years, and him being a huge boost to them over the last few years coming through. So. Yeah, I'm sure it's very difficult for him to turn down. Is it for just this year or is it for the future? He's probably still young enough. I can imagine if he had come out to Geelong, he'd be probably accelerated quickly enough into the team. Normally, guys come out as 18-year-olds. It probably takes them 2 or 3 years to make their AFL debut. I don't think that would have been the case with him. He probably is ready-made for it. But yeah, he obviously sat and thought about it and made a decision that. Mayo football is calling, and I always say when I came out, thank God I didn't have to make a decision between Mayo football and coming out and play professional sport. It's a very, very hard decision to make. And I know if I was back in his shoes to make a decision, I'd have struggled. But your county is calling, and I suppose when you grow up as a young boy or girl, your dream always is to either win Sam Maguire or win Brendan Martin. So yeah. It's a very difficult decision, and I'm sure it has been a difficult kind of 6 or 8 weeks for him.
That's a really interesting point, Cora, on whether or not this is, a stay of execution when it comes to his career in the GAA, and maybe he'll go down to the AFL in a year's time or whatever, because it does seem that there is an opportunity for Mayo in the short term to try and get over the finish line and try and get their hands on Sam Maguire, especially when you've got Cillian O'Connor back this year. He's 29, I think, at this point. Diarmuid would be 27 maybe. So you've got those two guys in the peak of their powers. That's a pretty compelling argument to say to Oisin Mullin that if you come back to Mayo, you may not have a chance of winning an All-Ireland as much as you would if you stay for just one more season.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. I think, Mayo are probably... we've said this a number of times, but I do think, it's probably, in the next year or two that their chances are really there if they want to take it. It's a very interesting move, even if you look at the whole Stephen Cohen going as the Mayo captain and Tommy Conroy going as vice captain. Was that a shrewd move by James Horan? Tommy Conroy and Oisin Mullin are, the best of friends and have played football, grown up for underage. They've come up through all the underage academies in Mayo. They've played school football together in Ballinrope and won an All-Ireland B title there. So, there's all of that too. There's the draw of Tommy Conroy now being vice-captain. Stephen Cohen, who's quite a young player as well. So, yeah, maybe Oisin had looked at that and said, well, will I give it one last hurrah? Or, maybe, who knows? I'm certainly sure that Geelong won't, give up on him, for AFL season 2023. I'm sure they'll be pushing to get him out again. They obviously seen something over the last few years in him. Let's remember he was meant to come out just before COVID hit in 2020. So, they've been keeping an eye on him and trying to really push hard to try and get him out. So, whether they take him out as a 21 or a 22-year-old, I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. So, it's another kind of, he sees it as, the All-Ireland is in July or August this year, so it's kind of 6 or 7 months more at home, and do Geelong take him then? These are only the things I'm thinking, or does he stay with Mayo for the rest of his career? Who knows? But it's certainly from a Mayo fan's point of view and a Mayo supporter's point of view, it's great that we have him for next season. It's
interesting the way that you guys have kind of put the template down, where you can go out for a while. Obviously the seasons are different, and the AFLW is a relatively new concept, and so maybe there'll be more resistance to players having a dual existence when it comes to the men's game. But who knows, you might be right, and maybe he plays a limited number of minutes over the next couple of years for Geelong, and they think that's worthwhile because he can have an impact on games. Before I talk to you about your own season so far, we had Breach Stack on last week talking about just the emotion of making it back from the fairly horrific neck injury that she suffered, and your voice is there chipping in when that moment where she actually gets the jersey, and it's just an incredible scene where the head coach has clearly made the decision that she's going to be named, but leaves it to the very last second to name her. Did you know that she was going to be named in the team? I was sure from her pre-season and how well she'd been performing in her training that she was going to be named. I don't think there was much doubt in anyone else, but
I do say to our coach Al, he's a very good coach. I think he's trying to get into acting a little bit too. He does like all these video moments where they announce debutants, and obviously it's a lot different how we announce them at home, where you're pulled aside and you're told you're starting. But yeah, they certainly like to do their moments over here. But yeah, it certainly was very special for Breed. She'd obviously had a very turbulent 12 months previous to that. I think it was nearly a year to the day to when she was injured. So I was 100% certain that she was going to play. And then when I seen there was only 20 names up on the board, and obviously 21 is what a match day team is. I certainly knew it was her. But it was nice the way he done it and left her to the last, because, as I said, it was a very difficult 12 months for her. And I know certainly I've seen her working so hard to try and make that debut, and there's been a lot of demons, certainly from a mental point of view in training, and coming back initially before we went home in May, June last year, and even coming back out training again in October, and all that kind of contact work that people don't see. I think a lot of people don't realise there was periods of for a couple of hours after the match, there was talks of Breed, being paralysed and not being able to move again. So, she was millimetres from that happening. So, the mental torture with injuries to try and get over all them demons and get all them tackles in. Her first performance was immense, and I'm just glad that she's got these games under her belt, and she's only going to get stronger and stronger. And it's a credit to her and the medical staff of the Giants that that she's got to where she has.
It's an incredible story, really, and she did say, though, that you stayed out at the end of last season. We didn't probably know this, but she got back and might have been able to play at the end of last season. But she said that you guys stayed out and practiced and trained and had extra coaching from the manager as well. And that seems to have been a kind of a seminal moment in her own self-belief. When that was happening, when you were going to those training sessions, did you think, this is all a bit crazy, what are you doing? Or were you like, actually, you know what, if you keep going here, you're going to be able to do it?
No, I don't think I ever thought it was crazy. I probably seen how driven she was the early days, and I'm talking very early days now. This is probably a week or two after the Nick break, and we were away in a hub at the time, and she was she was doing daft stuff at the time that probably wasn't, it's certainly advised by any of the medical staff of the Giants, but she was trying things that she probably shouldn't have been, just to get back for the end of the season. I don't think the Giants staff would ever have ticked her off medically to come back, but she was trying everything. And once the season ended, I think she knew in her head that she didn't want that to be the way to finish her AFL career. So she decided, we'll wait on for a little while. In Australia, I think we waited on maybe for 2 months, and then kind of we done 6 weeks of training with Al, our head coach, who's a great guy, and you love to spend time around, and you learn things from him all the time. So yeah, myself and Breed and Cora and young Ogie used to meet Al maybe 3 or 4 times a week for just touch sessions, and they're very slow build up sessions for Breed, and you kind of forget when she's back out kicking the ball and doing stuff, but then the minute we went into contact, you could see how nervous she was. And I suppose it brought me back to the times when I had to learn how to do everything again after I broke my leg, and that was like contact, learning how to fall, small things like that. So you knew how far she was away at that stage, and I mean, we're just using tackle bags and stuff, but I suppose her confidence really built over that kind of 6 weeks in them, really individual sessions where there's only 2 or 3 of us in the session. It gives you time to make mistakes, and it's only me and Cora that's there. She's not worrying about everyone else. So she really grew in that kind of 5 or 6 weeks, and obviously went home and then decided that she was coming back and really attacked. The rest of it went back and played Gaelic football with our club, and that gave her more and more confidence, even though Gaelic football isn't as contact based, but it was just that confidence that grew and grew. And yeah, when she came back in October, when we got out of hotel quarantine, she really flourished and got that confidence back. But I suppose you're never going to have your full confidence back till you get your first match under your belt. And unfortunately for us, our practice match was cancelled. We were meant to play Adelaide in a practice match, but because of COVID, we didn't get a practice match in. So round 1 was always going to be our first match back. And yeah, as I said, she acquitted herself very well, and went down on some really brave balls that I'm sure she had probably flashbacks, when she was going down early days for the first few balls in the match. But as I said, she acquitted herself very well, and she's getting stronger and stronger, and will do for the rest of the season.
How's your own form going? You've won one and lost one at the start of the season here, and you've scored in both of those games. So how is your own form at the moment?
Yeah, it's not too bad. Like, I'd be happy from a goal scoring point of view. 4 goals obviously from 2 games from an AFL point of view is quite good. I think this time last year I think it took me till around 4 to kickstart my goal scoring spree. So yeah, from the goal scoring point of view, it's probably my strongest pre-seasons I've had since maybe my leg break. That was probably my other strongest pre-season. It's been my longest one as well. From the Giants' point of view, I got out as early as I could this time, even though we still probably missed 4 weeks pre-season because of obviously hotel quarantine and getting out later. But I feel really strong and fit. Had a little bit of a groin niggle going into round 1, but thankfully that settled down. I'm feeling good. The body is good. I rarely miss training over here. It's not a thing that I like to do. So pre-season has probably been my strongest so far. So. Yeah, a difficult defeat yesterday against Freo, but Freo are probably one of the top two or three teams in the competition. So we were expecting a really tough game against them. But we'll build on. We have Melbourne coming up this weekend, so it's very thick and fast game wise. It's all about just recovering from week to week and getting yourself up for the game, whether it's on a Saturday or Sunday. It's difficult with COVID times. We played in Melbourne yesterday. It's fly in, fly out. So we fly the morning of the match, get to Melbourne. We have to stay within. We were playing in Whitten Oval. We have to stay within Whitten Oval until for a couple of hours until our match happened. These are all COVID protocols. Normally we fly the night before the match. So things like that are difficult to get used to. But looking forward, we're away again. So we've been away. This will be our 3rd weekend away. So. That sometimes can be draining on the body and all the travelling. But we were lucky then we're home for a few weeks. So certainly looking forward to playing in Sydney. Well,
look, it's great to catch up with you. Thanks a million. Keep up the goal scoring, and we'll talk to you real soon, Cora. Cheers.
Yeah. Thanks a million, guys. Take care.
It's Cora Staunton there, who, as she said herself, is in good form at the early start of the AFLW season. We'll obviously keep you up to date with that as it unfolds. It's 10 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors.
Just to quickly wrap up some of the GA talking points then from the weekend. Obviously Kilcoo and St Finbarr's progressed to the All-Ireland series after their wins yesterday. Finbar Stacks, good game. The early goal for St Finbarr's kind of killed Stacks to a certain extent, given the control that they've had in a few of their games earlier this season, and it looked like Stacks could have launched a pretty sensational late comeback, but Finbarr's were definitely the better team, so they're Munster champions. And speaking of better teams, Kilcoo just absolutely destroyed Derry Gonley of Fermanagh yesterday. 3-10 to 3 points was the full-time score there. Not exactly a great spectacle, to say the least. And it kind of leads us on to Andy McEntee, who was speaking in the aftermath of Meath's 5-point win over Wexford in the O'Byrne Cup. The headline here in the Irish Examiner: McEntee describes GAA split season as ludicrous. We should state here first of all that January has rarely ever been the preserve of the inter-county season anyway. This is not any different. It's what's going to happen later in the year, which Andy McEntee is worried about. He says, we're going to spend half of the year without looking at the best footballers in the country playing any sort of showpiece games. You're absolutely giving away this time to other sports. We're in a competitive market here to grab people's attention, to get the best people playing inter-county football, and the season is closed for half the year. It's ludicrous, just ludicrous. So he's worried about what's going to happen with the All-Ireland finals being played in July.
I see that a lot of people have this viewpoint. It'll be interesting to see exactly what happens when we have the proper split season. This is still a hybrid where there shouldn't really be club action. Club action should be finished by this time next year. So I don't know. I'm willing to let the experiment unfold before pronouncing that it's ludicrous.
Mick Foley had a really interesting piece in the Sunday Times yesterday where he reflected upon the TV viewing figures coming out of RTE, and he was saying that the club games were peaking at just over 100,000 viewers, and it's at a plateau, that it's kind of washed its own face. One of his points, which I think is very true, is that in the club season you just have a lack of continuous storylines where people are becoming aware of this St Finbarr's team for the first time or this Austin Stacks team for the first time, people outside of Cork and Kerry respectively, obviously, whereas in the inter-county season you have the the constant churn of the top teams and getting to know the Dublin players, Mayo players, etc. And I wonder maybe if actually over a period of time that we just become used to the chaos that is part of the club game, getting to know new teams all the time, like I'd imagine college football fans in the United States get used to new players all the time. I wonder if actually this has its fixed place later in the year. From August onwards, it slowly builds that viewership and that sort of way of looking at Gaelic games. We get used to it over a period of time, and actually that 100,000 becomes 150, 200,000 over the few years that it's on TV.
Let's see. It's 13 minutes past 9. We're going to take a quick break. We're back talking NFL. Mike Carlson.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
All that has happened is people have come in here, right, and listened to the pod for the last 29 episodes and seen the lifestyle that Paddy Andrews has had. He's wearing a Roddy Collins jacket. He's got his teeth done like Ross from Friends. He is looking he's looking magnificent, and he's ready to go.
Just for the pod, lads.
Just for the pod.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Bobo, the Kilcoo goalkeeper, you must be delighted. You're an Ulster champion again. How does it feel?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's hard to describe now, you know. It'll probably sink in over the next couple of days, but look, it's nice when you win, you know.
And what if I'd asked you now to describe Kilcoo? How would you describe it to me? What sort of place is it?
Don't blink anyway, because you'll miss it. Look, we're small wee area, you know. I'm sure you've heard this over the years, but it's tiny, a shop and 2 pubs and a chapel. You know, it's a small wee place and probably about 1,000 people in it. So, and I would say every one of them's here today.
And that's it. They really do get behind you. It means a lot to all the fans and supporters to get out and support you.
Well, to be honest, this means as much to our supporters than it does to us. You know, like everything we do in the football pitch is for our supporters. We got beat in 2018, and it was tough, but we promised them not to give up on us. We're on a fantastic journey here, and it's only going to get better. And the year after went in All-Ireland final, so hopefully we'll go one step further for them. And
what about tonight? Will you go out tonight?
What do you think?
I would say yeah, but I just asked Michal Rooney. He said he's just going to have a pizza.
I love pizza, man. I'm sure I'll probably be carried out of somewhere, know me.
Good stuff, Bobo. Congratulations.
Thank you, Aisling.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
I don't know. I think you're all wrong about the club championship. I think that we're gonna fall in love with people and be like, look at that story, you know. That's Kilcoo's Bobo Kane in conversation with Aisling O'Reilly after their Ulster Championship win yesterday. Our GA coverage on OTB is brought to you by AIB. You'll also get interviews from the St Finbarr's win against Austin Stacks and more reaction to Kilcoo's win across the OTB channels right now. And a big announcement. The Football Pod returns this week. Tommy, Paddy and Andy are back with a very special episode on Tuesday morning. There's a 24-hour window where you can only get that on the OTB Sports app. So make sure you've downloaded the Sports app and turn on notifications and subscribe to the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy and Tommy Rooney as well. At 16 minutes past 9, it's time for us to turn our attention to the NFL, and hopefully Mike Carlson is still awake after an epic weekend of watching football.
You know, Jerry, I got to tell you, as it came around early in the morning, when Patrick Mahomes got sacked at midfield just before halftime and then turned around and threw the touchdown pass to Kelsey, I said, okay, that's over. And I went to bed remarkably early, got 4 hours of sleep, 3.5 hours of sleep, and then got up and watched the second half highlights. And indeed, it was over for the Steelers. So that made my life a little bit easier.
Well, I stayed up till the end of the 49ers-Texans game, or the 49ers Cowboys game.
one of those teams.
And I'm feeling a little bit brain dead after it. The last quarter was an epic in terms of the amount of time that it took, but also in terms of the officiating and just the degeneration of both sides' play, as it looked like both of them were trying to lose the game for whatever reason. Do you know what happened at the end of the game for anybody who didn't watch it?
Yeah.
Did the Cowboys know the rules?
Yeah, basically the Cowboys are trying to move. They need a touchdown to win. San Francisco, for some reason, on 3 straight plays, gives them the sideline so that they can gain 10 or 15 yards and step out of bounds and stop the clock. They finally stopped doing that. And Dak Prescott at about he's about 45 yards away. They don't really want to throw a Hail Mary if they don't have to. So Prescott basically does a designed quarterback run right up the middle of the field. They can't stop the clock, obviously. He slides to a stop. The offensive line runs up to get around him, and he picks up the ball and gives it to his center, who then bends down and sets up, and the line sets up around him. After about 4 seconds after the slide, the umpire, whose name is Judge, strangely enough, comes crashing into Prescott in the center from behind, because before the play can run, the umpire has to touch the ball. He has to set the ball for the offense to go. And basically, Prescott should have known that. You give the ball to an official. You don't give the ball to your own center. So then the umpire fights his way past the center, touches the ball, and then basically tries to scramble out through San Francisco's defensive line. Meanwhile, the clock is running all this time, and it was only at about 6 seconds when Prescott slid. So the game ends, basically. The game ends with the umpire trying to fight his way through some of the linemen, the Cowboys trying to get a snap off before the end of the game, and it was just utter chaos. But basically, nobody under the Cowboys seemed to understand the rule. Well, nobody meaning Prescott. But also, if he's going to run the ball up the middle like that, he can't extend the play to get an extra 5 yards or so running. The idea was to set him up so that on the last play of the game, instead of having to throw a Hail Mary, which is a high pass that's a jump ball in anybody's ball, he could throw a more or less designed play where they could run pass routes. And they had twice run the old-fashioned flea flicker play, which Kellen Moore's team in college, Boise State, used to run, where you throw to one receiver and he laterals the ball back like rugby to another one. I was thinking they might try that a third time, but it never came to play. And it was basically just what you said. It was a chaotic fourth quarter, and it was a game that the Cowboys basically took themselves out of with just a long series of stupid penalties, mostly before the snap. And then the 49ers in the fourth quarter decided they would play the same game. It was really bizarre.
So the 49ers looked great for the first quarter, like really sensational.
Absolutely.
Kind of a Super Bowl team. Why were they not able to maintain that? Was it because the Cowboys are good, or was that a false showing from the 49ers at the start?
It's a little bit of both. I think Dallas adjusted pretty well. Dan Quinn, it was basically taking his defensive line inside out to try to stop the 49ers getting outside lanes and try to force them to come inside, which was still successful for them, but not like the first drive of the game where they literally cut Dallas apart. And in the fourth quarter, you got some strange decisions from Jimmy Garoppolo and some kind of some mistakes, which indicate why people, don't consider him the sort of long-term favorite to stay in San Francisco for the last year of his contract. He threw a cross-field pass that was extremely ill-judged to a guy who was covered, behind the line of scrimmage. He missed Brandon Ayuk on a play through an interception on the next series. And then San Francisco had a chance to close the game out before all those shenanigans with Dak Prescott on a 4th and 2 inches, which took the officials about 15 minutes to decide where they should place the ball for the measurement. And the 49ers put their tackle in motion, and he wasn't set enough. When he stopped his motion and then got into his 3-point stance, the officials decided he wasn't set enough before the snap. So they had a penalty and turned the ball over to Dallas. It was bizarre, and a beautiful start to the game and a really ugly finish.
Yeah, I do wonder, is that playoff nerves? Because these are players who, understand the rules, are like, so that it was actually Trent Williams who made that final error, who was literally the most experienced player on the field and the all-pro left tackle who makes that stupid mistake at the end of the game that nearly cost his team the whole season. Like, is that just nerves, or what's going on? Why do?
Well, I blame Trent Williams a little bit less, because he does do what he's supposed to do. He goes across the line, he resets it at the end of the line, and goes into a 3-point stance, like I said. So once he's in the 3-point stance, he's pretty much set. But Jimmy Garoppolo needs to give him a beat before he takes the snap. There has to be that just moment where he establishes, quote unquote, himself as set. So I would put that more down to Garoppolo in terms of nerves and speeding up, everything speeding up for him. You have to stay calm and make sure that he's set before you go. The Cowboys had 2 penalties for exactly the same thing, and you need to learn by watching, basically, and not let it happen to you.
So the 49ers win, and they will now go to Green Bay to face Aaron Rodgers next Saturday night. I think that the fixtures have been scheduled. All of this is moot, though, because we know that the Super Bowl champions, we know at this stage it's going to be the Bills because of their performance the weekend. It was a record-breaking performance. The rest of this is all just... I don't know. It's the hors d'oeuvre, right?
Well, it's optimistic. I do like the way that the NFL always schedules the northernmost team that plays in an outdoor stadium for Saturday night in January, which was the case with the Bills, although it didn't affect them in the least. That was a truly astounding performance. Seven possessions in a row. They scored touchdowns against what is supposed to be a pretty good defensive team, but they basically tore New England apart. New England had one chance sort of to stay in the game, and Micah Hyde made, I think, the play of the weekend thus far, with an interception of Mac Jones throwing a deep pass and putting it pretty much on target to Nelson Aguilar, and Hyde just came out and stretched out and took it out of Aguilar's hands. Basically, it was just about to go into his hands. But Josh Allen, it's funny how many teams are playing very old-fashioned football. I mentioned the flea flickers from Dallas. The Bills play a lot of what is basically single-wing football back from the leather helmet days, and Josh Allen running the ball and then throwing, and the combination, when it works, is just unstoppable, because he's got such a strong arm and accurate arm, and he threw a pass which was quite rightly compared to the catch, Joe Montana. Not as important, but running out of bounds, about to go out of bounds, floating the ball to the back of the end zone, if that was what he intended to do, and Dawson Knox making it. The Bills are going to be very hard to stop. They beat Kansas City, remember, back in week 5, but the Chiefs are a much better defensive team now than they were then. And I think that it's going to be a fascinating game. And I thought the Chiefs played really well against the Steelers once like I said, Mahomes kind of broke the game open. But for most of the first half, it looked like the Steelers were going to drag the game down to their level. And then, Ben would be able to throw one pass and keep, get them in it. But that wasn't to be. They finally unleashed their offense. So I think that's going to be a really good game, and probably a very high scoring one.
It's really interesting, Mike. Like, which do you think is going to be something that shows more vulnerabilities within the Kansas City defense? Is it going to be a team that are erratic but spectacular, or a team like the Bills, who I guess are spectacularly consistent? They didn't break any scoring records or passing yards at the weekend, but it was just consistently. What did he say? There 7 drives in a row where they scored from, no interceptions. I don't think they punted the ball once throughout the game, and the only time they took a knee was at the end. This is something that's obviously unreal, and don't get me wrong, but it is consistent, and it is time after time after time doing the right thing in this Bills offense. So is that more dangerous in a way to the outrageous prospects that a different offense might pose towards Kansas City? Yeah,
I think that's exactly right. The Bills are balanced. They've got good receivers and a large group of them. Even Isaiah McKenzie, who his speed basically killed the Patriots both in the regular season and in the playoffs. And because Allen can run, the book on beating them is fairly simple. Keep Allen in the pocket, make him beat you as a drop back downfield passer. Don't let him extend plays by running. Getting out of the pocket, but that's easier said than done. And because he's so big as well. He's like a mobile version of young Ben Roethlisberger. And I think they're very consistent defensively as well. Sean McDermott's very good at playing a contained kind of defense and holding you in place. They're not the biggest pass rush team, which bodes ill for them. But even without Tre'Davious White in the secondary, they've done a good job of covering. They've got two very good safeties, which is essential against the Chiefs because you can't let Tyreek Hill beat you deep. If he opens up the game, then everything else flows from that. I think it's going to be a real challenge for Kansas City. And the key is probably at that second level. Bolton and Willie Gay, the two linebackers, played really well against the Steelers, but they're going to have more challenges against Buffalo to stop the run and get back and stop the pass. I think Kirksey probably plays a lot more at linebacker for the Chiefs.
It's good that the Buffalo fans are so reserved and that they won't get carried away with the victory at the weekend and the level of expectation. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mayo curse here, Mike, where the Mayo football team haven't won an All-Ireland since the Jurassic era, we like to say. And we feel like maybe the Bills winning this year is going to be a harbinger of good things to come for the good folk of Mayo. So, I mean, if anybody's unaware of this, they're one of the most cursed teams in American sports history, right?
The Bills, I don't know what the curse, if there's a curse. They were good in the AFL before they merged into the NFL in the 60s. And then they had those 4 years with Jim Kelly and Marv Levy at coach, where they went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row and lost each time, which, people put it down, but it's actually a pretty good achievement to get to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. And then there was this long fallow period up in the frozen tundra of Buffalo. And the city, of course, is, in the Rust Belt doldrums, as it were. So this is something that really, really livens them up. And I think that McDermott is, as I said, a really smart coach with a balanced kind of offense-defense right now. Brian Dable called a great game, the offensive coordinator. But in Allen, they have a special talent who they have actually developed, and you don't get to say that very often in the NFL. He came into the NFL as a guy with a really strong arm, but wildly inaccurate when he was at Wyoming. And they basically worked with him and developed accuracy, which you're not supposed to be able to do, originally by very cautious game planning to give him throws he could make, and then basically by letting him loose to run as well. And strangely enough, the running has made him a better passer. So, I give a lot of credit to that. I saw a video when I got up this morning. I was looking through things of a Buffalo fan jumping off the top of a bus in the parking lot and through a table, just like professional wrestling. It should have been like the ESPN Deportivo's announcers table, but he crashes the table in two. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty typical of Buffalo. The city that gave wings to the world.
And of course, the greatest tradition in all of sports, which is the now annual dildo toss from Buffalo fans. An official had to kick one out of the end zone at the weekend.
I'm amazed nobody's called it a bildo.
I'm just wondering, could Mayo perhaps tap into something like that? Maybe this is the good luck that Mayo needs.
Wow, it's worth a try. Speaking of that, did you see when on the game the game was being broadcast, the Cowboys game on Nickelodeon, and at one point they basically SpongeBob shot a huge wad of slime at the camera, or appeared at the CBS camera covering the game for the adults in the crowd. And I just thought, this is what it's basically come to. There's so much of the NFL audience now only understands the game in terms of Madden and Red Zone that you might as well just put cartoon characters out there.
It certainly seems to have worked. Can I just ask you about Belichick, right? So he says he's coming back for next year. He's coming back for next year because he believes in Mac Jones, or because he's never going to retire and they'll carry him in a box?
Yeah, I think the latter is probably closer to the evaluation. They rebuilt their team, and it was pretty successful. I don't know what happened to them after the bye week when they were 9-4 and they then went out and only beat the Jags, but they were beaten pretty convincingly by Indianapolis and the Bills, who were both quicker and took leads on them. And then Miami got a lead on them. But they made lots of mistakes. And it wasn't that different from the team the year before with Cam Newton there. There were a couple of games they could have won if they didn't make kind of silly unforced errors. They looked like a team that was at the same time both old and inexperienced, which you don't expect from the Patriots teams. So I think they're going to, Bill needs to get younger on defense. He needs to get a downfield threat on offense. Probably has to sort out his O-line, which was very good for a long part of the season, and then seemed to have a lot of trouble in the last month of the year. I just think he thinks, what else is he going to do? And each year becomes a challenge to him. So, it would be, I don't think he'd want to step down on a downer, but right now I think the Patriots are what their record says they are. Yeah. And it's going to take a big change to get them up into the elite of this thing. And Mac Jones, for all of his composure, say, as a rookie, was still a rookie quarterback in the end, and doesn't have the zippy arm that might have completed that pass to Aguilar if it led him rather than was thrown into his breadbasket, which is a harsh criticism, and I don't mean it as that, because he put the ball on target and Micah Hyde made a great play. Yeah. But basically, they were limited offensively, and you're not going to get to the Super Bowl if you're limited offensively. No, unless you've got a huge unless you've got the Ravens defense or the Bucks defense from 20 years ago. Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Great to have you with us this morning, Mike. Cheers. Thank you. It's Mike Carlson there. The games next weekend: the Titans and Bengals play on Saturday at 9:30. The Packers and 49ers play at 1:15. That's Saturday night, Sunday morning, and the Bucks against either the Rams or the Cardinals is Sunday at 8 o'clock. That's the game we'll all be able to watch, which is Tom Brady potentially against Sean McVay, and then it's the Chiefs and Bills, which probably is going to be the de facto Super Bowl in some people's eyes. That one is on Sunday evening at 11:30. So there will be a lot of zombie NFL fans in your lives for the next week or so. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. If you missed anything today, you can get it all back on the podcast network. OTB Rugby, Ronan O'Gara. OTB Football, Vinny Perth. OTB GAA, Cora Staunton, talking about Oisin Mullin and the AFLW. OTB Highlights, NFL analysis with Mike and the performance rankings, and OTB AM. You can get the full podcast from 10 o'clock. You'll also find it all on our YouTube channel. Join us tomorrow from 7:30. We'll be looking at the midweek Premier League, bringing you the latest segment from our Irish Rugby depth chart. And right now, here's more reaction to the weekend's football. Brian Kerr breaking down the big games with Nathan.
So Liverpool back to winning ways, a 3-0 win against Brentford this afternoon. Brian Kerr was alongside me on co-commentary. Brian, is that one of those matches you take the 3 points if you're Jurgen Klopp, you move on, you don't think too much more about it?
Yes, I would say. I'd say he's got plenty of things that are troubling him at the moment, and the first half performance today would not have helped those doubts that he may have in his mind about some of the backup players that he's had to play since Mane and Salah went away to the African Nations Cup, and also the fact that Keita is away and Thiago is missing from the midfield area. So, I don't think the performance in the first half today, Origi being absent as well, is a problem. If you think of Liverpool in recent times, it's been that front three have been consistent with Firmino, Salah, Mane. Jota come into the picture last year and added another one to it, so it was 3 from 4 for every big match. And Origi was a backup player who wouldn't say they could totally rely on, but he had big moments for them, and he's had big moments this year when he's played. But now they're down to a situation where Origi been out, and 2 of those been out away at the tournament, that they've only got 2 from the 5. And I wouldn't say that Firmino's goal scoring or finishing would make Jurgen Klopp feel that the situation is very good at the moment until the other 2 come back. So I'd say overall satisfactory to win the match, but it would not have eased any of the concerns he would have, and I'd say certainly a lot of their supporters would have, of their chances of catching Manchester City.
Are expectations around performance level of Liverpool too high, considering they won that game 3-0? They dominated possession. Alisson didn't have too many saves to make. As you say, they're missing several players. You throw Thiago into the mix, a couple of other fringe players who could add something, and they won that game relatively comfortably.
Well, they've set the expectations by the quality of their performances in recent seasons, and when the first thing you think about them is intensity in their play, and creating chances, and speed and quickness up front, and floundering defences struggling to stay with them. We're seeing a little bit less of that. I mean, looking at the Arsenal match during the week, I thought they really struggled when Arsenal were down to 10 men. They rarely looked like they were going to break through. Arsenal played cutely enough, I thought, with the players that they had. It was a 5-3-1 kind of a formation, but Lacazette dropped in to make it a 4, and it was a 5 and a 4. And while they had all the ball, Liverpool, it still ended up where Alisson had to make a big save for them to keep it at 0-0. So you combine that with today's performance. I mean, the second half they made a lot of chances. Once they got the breakthrough goal, and Brentford began to fade, I felt. So are the expectations too high? They've set the expectations, and we kind of feel that they have the resources as well financially to compete with Manchester City and Chelsea and Manchester United. Maybe they don't have.
Well, on that then, and maybe even before we get to that greater debate about Salah's contract and Liverpool's ambitions for the next couple of years, right here, right now, with what Jurgen Klopp has available, we've seen over the last couple of years, occasionally he might change away from his regular 4-3-3 formation, but we saw last season with the injury crisis, he did everything in his power not to have to change it, moving players into different positions. Looking at them today, you mentioned during commentary, Oxlade-Chamberlain, maybe a little bit lost out on the right-hand side at times. He's far better when he's coming from deep. Should he be looking, when Mana and Salah aren't there, to actually trying something different instead of trying to fit square pegs and round holes?
I would just say, who are we to challenge Jurgen Klopp? He is without doubt one of the great managers in world football. His record speaks for itself. The style of football he plays, everybody kind of enjoys it because there's risk involved in it. Usually the opposition get chances. We saw that in the match they dominated today against a promoted team for the first season up, Brentford. And with that risk taken and courage to play in the style they do, we know that there's always a game with Liverpool. It's rarely uneventful. So should he change the system at times? I don't have a problem with him being consistent about it. What I do think is that it makes it a bit easier for opposition to prepare to play against them. I know as a manager, when I was managing, I always liked to be able to predict what the opposition were going to do before the match, who was going to play, where they were going to play, and to show the players in advance how it was going to be. It was a bit frustrating when you were playing against someone who were a bit unpredictable. So you could be right in suggesting that maybe they should, but they're still going to have all the possession in the match. The system and the shape, even if you change it, is not going to have that much influence. I think where you can change it is in terms of the positions the players take up when you're dominating the ball. I said it during the commentary today. I'm just surprised that Liverpool don't work harder or spend more time in trying to outnumber the opposition in the wide positions and end up getting crosses back across the goal, rather than depending on the type of brilliant cross that came in today from Robertson on the second goal, when Brentford were starting to get tired and the defensive unit wasn't as solid as it had been the first half. So we're about to change the shape, possibly, but certainly a change of emphasis and more variation in their attack and play.
So
when they've so much of the ball.
What you're saying there is too often it's Henderson or Jota getting to the end line, pulling it back to Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, and then the cross goes in, rather than actually Robertson and Alexander-Arnold being the one getting to the end line.
That's right. Or Curtis Jones or Henderson getting to the end line, or if it's the forward players that are playing today and Firmino's playing through the middle, is it Jota and Oxlade-Chamberlain? Are they linking with the full backs to get it to? If you look at Brentford today, they playing a system with a 5 at the back, and the wing back is the widest player on either side. I would have thought, I always think the way to beat that is to get 2v1 against him. Now, of course, Brentford have a plan to deal with that. The wide midfielder, the outside midfielder of the three comes across, or the outside centre-back comes across. But I think there's a way of doing it. Often Curtis Jones was the one making the 2v1, making the run in behind. But I just thought it was, again, as in the Thursday night against Arsenal, it was very centralised and it was very almost predictable, and the quality wasn't there to break it down consistently enough. But eventually they got the job done, and they'll all go home fairly happy. Some of the players individually won't be happy with their own performances, but they may just see it as a blip. They may be recovering from the virus, and it might be just more matches in their legs, and we may see them, come back to where they were previously when it was all guns blazing and Jota was at his best, Firmino was at his best. We're not seeing that at the moment.
And generally, the history books show under Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool do finish seasons strongly and seem to get better and better over the final few months. So maybe we will see that. On the greater picture of Mo Salah and his future and his contract, I have heard some pundits say that Mo Salah needs to be realistic. That Liverpool have given him a lot. They have helped create maybe the best player in world football right now, and that while he can understandably demand a big contract, he also needs to be a little bit reasonable as well. But I think the vast majority of people think Mo Salah is the best player in the world right now, and if he's looking for 400 grand a week, that Liverpool need to give him that, because even if you think of the finances, if you lose him on a free transfer and you have to replace him with a 60, 70, 80 million pound player, you're going to end up losing that way. What do you think Liverpool should do?
Well, I think it's interesting that now that suddenly they haven't got Mane or Salah, and I think there's been very few matches in the last 4 seasons that either one of them hasn't played in. Suddenly neither of them have played, and both of them are coming up to 30 years of age, their next birthday. So I think that's a consideration for Liverpool. I'm sure they've thought it through. But when you look at how they performed in these 2 games, there's a couple of more games. There will be the Arsenal, the Cup match, and the league match with Crystal Palace, that they'll probably be missing both of them as well. So that will give them a picture of where they really are. There was no evidence to suggest today that Liverpool can do without them comfortably, and that they've got lots of players waiting in the background, goal scorers of high quality, attacking players that can dislodge a blanket defence. So where's the relevance of Salah and his contract and all that? Well, I think from Salah's point of view, he's perfectly entitled to look at what's going on with Ronaldo and Messi, let's say, and other highly paid attacking players who are on. We see the player figures in the newspapers, and we're up at 300,000 a week and 400,000 a week and 5. I don't know what the actual figures are and whether some of them are tax free or whether they're that. But I think he's entitled to rate himself up in that quality now. I think he's entitled to hold firm until Liverpool maybe not concede to all the demands. They've got to weigh up the overall position of the club. They are not a nation state running a club as the situation is with Manchester City or a PSG, or the money that appears to be available at Chelsea when they need a player. So they have a different set of accounts to look at before they re-sign any player. But I feel that it would be a drastic mistake for Liverpool not to get a deal done with Mo Salah, because, as you said, if they lose him for a small fee in the last year of his contract, a smaller fee than what they should get, or if they lose him for nothing at the end of his contract 18 months down the line, it would be a bit of a disaster for them. Getting a replacement will be very, very difficult. But in fairness to Liverpool, the recruitment of attacking players over the years have been very, very good. And we see Coutinho coming back to Aston Villa after 4 years. When he was sold 4 years ago, people wondered at that time, would Liverpool, would they cope with the loss
back
of
12, 13 years, they've managed to go from Torres to Suarez to Coutinho to Salah, which is a remarkable run of success.
Exactly, and you know, those players were all brilliant while they were at Liverpool. They weren't always brilliant when they went away from Liverpool, which is an interesting one as well. So they got high value, but you know, we don't know if they got someone of that standard lined up again that we don't know about, and that they'd be able to get for what might be considered under the market price, or at a very nice price, which they've done in over the years with all those players you mentioned. They got them at a good price.
We had thought we'd be commentating on the North London derby today. Late change of plan with that game being called off. There's a lot of controversy around how Arsenal managed to get that game postponed, how many COVID issues there actually are in the squad. They're clearly missing players through the African Cup of Nations, through injury. They wouldn't have had a particularly strong team to maybe go into the game, but they were able to play on Thursday night. And I guess around the fairness and integrity of the Premier League, considering lots of teams have played games with important players been missing. You think back to the Liverpool-Tottenham game we covered, where Liverpool were missing pretty much their entire midfield and Virgil van Dijk. The game went ahead. And even Leeds United today, who go and beat West Ham with a subs bench that had Rodrigo and a load of kids who'd never played in the Premier League because of their COVID issues. Is there question marks around the integrity of what's going on, where certain games have been called off and others are going ahead?
Well, I think this is the first time that there's been real controversy about it, maybe in advance of it because of what a couple of pundits have said, and the Spurs have made a point about it. Up until now, everyone's just basically accepted it. Leicester, I remember Brendan Rodgers having given out a strong opinion that they felt that one of their games should have been called off and it wasn't, and then the next game was called off. I think generally people around have accepted that this situation has been so difficult for the clubs, so difficult for the players, and so prominent in society that people respected the honesty of the clubs when they said they had a severe problem. But now we've come to a situation with Arsenal where they play the game during the week, and there were no Boy Scouts in the squad the other night. They had a strong team out on the pitch. If they had problems with COVID and injuries or suspensions and whatever, it was still a strong team. And then they go to a process where they've loaned out a couple of players, and suddenly after that game they're saying, well, with 0-0 draw, Xhaka got put off in the match, he'd be suspended for the Spurs game. We've loaned out a couple of more players, and we have a serious COVID problem. So people are, I think, very reasonably asking questions as to why this game, and what's the protocol, and what are the criteria, and who gives the information to the Premier League that make the decision. I understood it was the medical people that convinced the Premier League. Maybe that's not the case, because this seems to have been
well, the Premier League did say that they did take into account the players who were at the African Cup of Nations,
yes,
which with Arsenal again is a bit of a peculiarity, because obviously you're taking into account Aubameyang being gone, even though he's not even a part of the Arsenal squad.
But why should they be taking that into account? Because clubs have had plenty of time to prepare for that. All clubs know in advance of the season that competition is going to be on, and if they've got prominent players with countries who have qualified, that they're most likely to be going to be in it. So they've got plenty of time to plan their squad. So I don't think that's a reason that should be taken into account, because then other clubs, for instance like Liverpool today, or for any other game, could be saying, well, we've got 3 players there, you've only got 1, and other clubs will be saying, well, we've got none, and so on. So I think it becomes a total mess if that's one of the criteria. So are the 3 criteria now: COVID, injuries and the African Nations Cup. I understood that the criteria were COVID only. Now, if you roll in a couple of injuries into that, you can understand that could be a consideration. But it seems to have gone too far the other way. And what I don't get is how clubs, I mean, I thought the rule was if you had 13 players and the goalkeeper, outfield players. Well, what happens with all the underage players that clubs have? That, you know, clubs store up at times, it seems they store up quality young players that they loan out to other clubs. They take them back in, depending on the number of games they're playing, the number of competitions they're involved in, or otherwise. Surely those players are good enough. If you're if you've gone past youth football, and we've seen even today Liverpool bring on a 17-year-old, Manchester United play a 19-year-old last night. Clubs play 17, 18, 19-year-olds when they think they're good enough, or they put them on the bench in a match, and when they think the match is won, they'll put them on in the game. Surely there's lots of players around in Arsenal's under-23 group that are good enough to be part of the squad in the Premier League match. I just don't get it.
There was a Liverpool manager's name being sung around Anfield today, but it wasn't Jurgen Klopp. Rafa Benitez's name was being sung around Anfield as the news filtered through that he'd been fired as Everton manager. This had always seemed like a strange appointment for the outset, considering his record at Liverpool and maybe even the style of football, considering the way Everton see themselves. The writing was on the wall after Adamida and Norwich yesterday. What's your take on it all?
Well, I agree that I thought his appointment was a strange one, given the, his attachment to Liverpool. I mean, I don't think it's that long since he seemed to be on a tour doing a one-on-one show, even in Dublin, about his time at Liverpool. And I kind of thought that there's always an element to him that I'd like to go back to Liverpool when the chance comes. So I think it was a hard one for Everton supporters to take. Someone who was always he was considered so successful at Liverpool, but also always aligned himself with Liverpool and the club, and he had family living there after he was finished and after he left. It was going to be a hard one for them to accept unless they were very successful. They finished up 10th last season. There was probably a bit of hope this year it was going to be better. The truth of it is that there's been so much money flittered away by Everton, by various managers, and I think the board and the directors of football and whoever has been involved in decision making on some of the players they've signed over the years that have helped to flitter away the money, that he was in a position this year that he's very little money to spend. He's taken Gray and Townsend and they're more or less signed for nothing, and there just didn't seem to be any more money in the pot for him to buy. You look at this week, or the last week or two, he gets Digne off the books. They take in a reasonable fee for him. He signs a lad from Dynamo Kiev, Mikolenko, who it's a big move for him. They put him straight into the team. He struggled in the match yesterday. He's no background in English football, 22-year-old Ukrainian international playing for Dynamo Kiev. Sort of player you think would want to be kind of put in gently into the team. They expect him to perform yesterday, and he didn't perform in the match. And I just look at. I think they've been losing too many games. The performances, the fact that Calvert-Lewin has been out injured has affected them. The various centre halves been out, have affected them. The depth of the squad has affected them. But just overall, it didn't seem to be working. I wouldn't blame Rafa too much, but I think the combination of the results and his history has just become too much. And when the crowd start bringing in banners in the match and waiting on the team, waiting on the scoreline to turn against them, almost as if they're hoping that the team get beaten. These are the most fanatical supporters. Everton supporters are some of the most loyal supporters. You and me know that from our trips away on Sundays and seeing the supporters when the team wasn't doing particularly well, 10th and 12th I think in the last 2 seasons, 8th the season before that, looked like something might be happening. But invariably they support the team, thick and thin. But when you see them starting to bring banners to the match, that's spelling the end is nigh, unless the results are very, very good.
Well, Benitez was obviously the lightning rod for criticism, but Everton, when you look at how the club is run, does look to be a complete basket case for several years. When you look at 6 managers in 6 seasons, you touch on some of the money that's been spent on the likes of Davy Klaassen and Alex
James Rodriguez
for 40 million.
Well, Rondon was nothing this year.
They've spent huge amounts of money. And even what's gone on over the last few weeks with Rafa Benitez, where they've got rid of the director of football, they've got rid of the director of medical. Luca Dean is arguably their best player.
One of their best
playing
players.
For Aston
One
Villa,
of their better players.
Playing for Aston Villa yesterday because he fell out with the manager, who they've now sacked.
Yeah.
It's bizarre and very disheartening if you're an Everton supporter.
Yeah, it is bizarre when you put it like that, the number of managers. And Ancelotti was one who you thought he might be able to change it, but he was involved in signing a lot of lads that didn't do it. Alan and James Rodriguez came in his time, and various Towson was another one. I think he might have been in Coleman's time, the Turkish lad, and he's rarely kicked the ball for them. But there's been lots of them, and it does seem like it's not in great shape. But you know, the manager is the key figure. The manager's budget is also a key figure. Although you look at Jurgen Klopp, you wouldn't say he had the biggest budget when he came in at Liverpool compared to the teams he's competing with at the top. So obviously the judgment with regard to the recruitment and the style of play was very, very important. They just don't seem to have had that in Everton, irrespective of who the managers have been. They've made a lot of errors in recruitment. It's too big. I think Benitez liked to have control of signings the way he had at Liverpool and some of his other jobs when he's at Newcastle. And he seems to get himself involved in internal rows with the leadership of the club, with the ownership of the club. He seemed to try to manoeuvre himself into a position of saying, I'm on the supporter side and we might need to be against the ownership, which is a very delicate balance and a very tricky area to be going. It doesn't seem like it seemed like he was in the same battle at Everton to have that control, but he had no money to spend in the market. But the manager nowadays cannot know the market by himself. The market is too big. It's a worldwide market now. The manager hasn't got time to be going to France and Germany and watching matches on a Sunday if you're playing a Saturday, and go to South America to watch matches midweek. He's got to rely on the expertise of other people around the club. It just doesn't seem that Benitez has been able to surround himself with those people at Everton or Newcastle previously. But yeah, it's a very, very frustrating time for Everton people, and it seems to be a bit like, again, we're back to mid-table mediocrity this season, and look again and build again. Where do we go?
Well, where do they go? Because it does feel as though as a club they're in limbo, and you talk about the supporter base and the atmosphere at Goodison Park, and we still talk of Everton as a big club, yet it's over a quarter of a century since they won a trophy and probably 35 years since they were relevant in terms of winning titles. They're waiting for this new stadium. They've been waiting, and they're going to be looking again for
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.